Welcome to the Canon Fodder Podcast, where today we are covering Dead Space and the book Dead Space Martyr by B.K. Evanson. I am Kyle Newcomb.
I'm Travis Knight.
And today we have a special guest speaker. This is Jenn. This is my girlfriend. She is very versed in the horror genre, so we figured it would be pertinent to bring her in since we're doing a horror game. Jenn, would you like to tell your story?
Biggest thing is playing mostly horror games, especially Amnesia would be one of my top horror games. And been reading Stephen King for a long time. But that, and also since then, going to reading a lot of like the zombie apocalypse, etc. type horror stuff lately, because that seems to be what's most popular in the book and Kindle network.
So that sets you up to talk a lot about Dead Space then, because this is a zombie apocalypse-like.
Essentially, yeah. Essentially,
it's a giant pandemic type, zombie type, etc.
Yeah.
In a different offshoot.
A little more sci-fi.
A little bit, yeah.
Than your regular horror stuff.
Same general gist. One person messes up, one thing happens, leads to giant world destruction.
So just to remind listeners, the way that this podcast works is that our main goal, our main objective, is to decide whether or not tie-in books is in any way a meaningful addition to the canon of the video game itself. So we want to see whether or not this book, Dead Space Martyr, meaningfully expands on Dead Space. So looking forward into the future, just give me a little barometer here. Did you guys like the game?
Dead Space?
Yes.
I love the game.
Jen?
Yeah. Even though I didn't play it, I watched through it because due to circumstances, my right wrist and gaming consoles don't get along anymore. But I watched a Let's Play by Markiplier.
So having watched it, because Kyle and I played it,
Yep.
Still thumbs up on the game?
Yeah.
All right, and I liked the game a lot. I played it when it first came out. When you were in basic, I think. I was just out of basic.
No, Dead Space came out before I...
Did it? Am I thinking of Dead Space 2?
I think you're thinking of 2.
Okay, well I played it then when we were in high school, and I liked it a lot then. And I also really liked it on this replay. And what about the book? Just to set the tone here.
I love the book.
I agree. I mean, personally, I liked the book a lot more, but that's also because I'm biased because I read a lot more than I game.
All right, so Kyle's going to get ganged up on today.
Yeah.
I like the book as well, so this is going to be a much more positive, wholesome episode.
Now, Jenn, this is the first time you've ever experienced anything from the Dead Space universe, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, Virgin Eyes.
All right.
Which is interesting. I mean,
and for you, it was the second half of the game. Okay.
Yeah. We'll go over where I stopped every single playthrough because I got annoyed.
Yeah.
I was you kept getting frustrated at the same part each time you told me, and
Yep.
then you just kind of gave up after that.
Yep. And the difference for you was the computer, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
I've been a Dead Space fan since it came out, and I have owned the book for a couple of years. In fact, we were going to use the book on a previous version of this podcast called Games is Lit, and we just never quite got around to it. So I just kind of sat afraid of this book on my shelf that I figured was going to be crap, and I was learned.
Yeah,
I got educated by B.K. Evanson here.
I was very, very surprised at how good this book was.
Which is good, because coming after Mass Effect Andromeda, I think another stinker one that broke the podcast.
Yeah, I think you and I both went into this very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Tainted?
Nihilistic, pessimistic.
Yeah.
Tainted? Yeah, I've thought about reading it. Originally, I was like, I'll read that book after you guys are done with it, after Andromeda, and then after listening to both of you guys, I'm like, nope, it's not even worth it.
You've got better ways to spend your money.
I have other books I can go read.
So, do we want to get into the game summary?
Yep, that's the first section on every podcast that we're going to do is going to be the game summary to give context for the book, because it turns out that you can't really learn a whole lot and you can't really analyze a whole lot without context.
Yep.
That is something I have not been able to drill into my 12-year-olds. Working on it.
One thing I noted was, one of the very first things I noted was when you boot the game up and you let it sit for a few minutes, it'll go into the menu, playthrough, to keep your screen from burning out and everything like that. And it sings Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And it is extremely creepy.
Yep, that was the trailer for the first game.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like the stereotypical, little kid sitting in a dark room singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and you're like, I don't know if I need to go run into my closet and cry now because there's a little kid that's either A, going to kill me, or B, I'm going to have to kill it because it's going to come
Dead
after
Space,
me.
so if it's a little kid, it's going to sprout 3 tentacles and shoot projectiles at you.
All right, so chapter 1 of the game is New Arrivals. Each chapter has a name, which I thought was kind of interesting.
And I feel like they fit pretty well.
And they broadcast it right in your face. It's not just picked off the menu. It's every time you start the new level, it sticks it right in your face so you get an idea of what it's going to be about.
Yep. So chapter 1, the game opens with Hammond and Kendra come into view of the Ishimura, which is the planet cracker that has gone dark, and no one can figure out why.
And a planet cracker is like a big, enormous starship, right?
Yes.
Yep, and
kind
it
of
has
like
a giant
the
drill.
transport from Alien.
Kind of.
Almost.
Okay.
If you tack a giant drill on the end of it, then...
They notice it's dark, and they can't establish contact at all with anyone on board.
Which is weird because there's normally over 1,000 people on board.
Yep.
So maybe a little more like the Enterprise than the Nostromo.
Yeah.
Like the Enterprise by way of driller.
Yeah.
Yep.
Resource miner.
Okay, I love the visual design of the Ishimura too. Like the fact that it's this big rib caged in cathedral ship.
Yep.
It's creepy as all get out.
Kendra is amazed with the no contact because there's 1,000, close to 1,000 people on there. She makes the statement, someone should be listening. Someone should pick up the phone. They get garbled speech coming through the comms after they boost the signal. Kendra thinks it may be busted comms array, and they're having issues with their encoder, and that's why they can't make contact. The shuttle crashes into the shuttle bay after a very tense moment with the gravitational.
Yeah, they were going in on auto, which basically is the ship. You effectively go on autopilot, and the Ishimura pulls you in, so you don't have to parallel park your ship. It does
so
it
normally
for you.
That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So
but something went awry during the auto sequence, and
you crash.
Hammond makes the decision to go in manual, and you crash into the bay.
Yep.
Which caused a huge argument because they were like, well, we're going to crash if we go to manual. And they're like, no, well, we're going to crash anyway, so let's go to manual and do it ourselves.
So
and at least we have a chance.
Hammond making bad decisions then?
It's also the beginning of the tension, the extreme tension between Zach Hammond and Kendra.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which throughout the entire game, there's this severe power struggle between both of them.
Yeah, between Hammond and Kendra. Kendra and Hammond argue about the crash. Kendra accuses Hammond of almost killing them, and Hammond retorts with, "I just saved our ass by going to manual mode." Kendra says that the port booster didn't lose power. That was why they went in funky.
Oh, okay. They lost power on part of the ship.
Yep.
So it was the ship that failed, not the Ishimura.
Yes.
In theory.
In theory, but the port booster didn't lose power. It was just gone. There's no port booster.
Okay.
It must have fallen off during the crash.
That would definitely lead to it losing power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They walk into the flight lounge. There's no power, no comms, and no one on the ship. They can't find anyone. There should be a essentially welcome party for them, but no one's there. Isaac logs into the security console, and lots of damage throughout the ship. He pulls up a damage report and sees that there's a ton of damage throughout the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Before you go much further, because I know exactly where you are in the game, when they first walk in the ship, there's just blood spots throughout the everywhere. You can't look at the screen anywhere without seeing a giant mash of different blood spots, but there's no actual bodies, there's no pieces, it's just blood everywhere. And so they're all going into this super skeptical as to, okay, well, where is everyone and whose blood is all over the floor, all over the walls, all over the ceiling.
Did you guys take note of what else was on the walls?
It's also, it's written in blood, but it's also this, I want to say an alien language, but it's not correct. It's the mutated creature language.
Yeah. And also some pleas in chalk or white paint. Yeah. So immediately there's blood and also crazy person graffiti all over the place. It's a good stage setter.
Yep.
It's very one of those oh God, what am I walking into right now?
They try and get the tram online, but it's offline. A quarantine kicks in, and we see a monster attacking the crew of the repair ship.
It's the first time we've seen necromorphs.
Yes.
Yep.
Kendra and Hammond run out of the room, and run away from the monsters, quote unquote, into an elevator, and you as the player, as Isaac, run away from the monsters as well into an elevator. One of the necromorphs smashes into the elevator, and the elevator just
you get chased.
Yeah.
Every time I've played this game, that chase scene right away, even though like this time I played it on easy in order to meet our deadline, still freaks me out.
Yep.
The close quarters, the not being able to look back and like look over your shoulder, it's just it's unnerving.
Well, that, and also at this point in the game, you have 0 weapons.
Yeah.
You have zero way to defend yourself, so it's pretty much, oh god, oh god, oh god, run. And that's like the entire mindset of the beginning of that.
And
you're still getting used to because the controls are kind of clumsy by design, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like Isaac is wearing a big welder suit and like really thick. It's a spacesuit and welder suit combined, so it's like clumpy and slow.
And Isaac doesn't run at a good speed anyway, which
Isaac wheezes.
Which I complained a lot about while I was watching it and watching Kyle play, and Kyle's like, well, he's an engineer, not soldier. I'm like, yeah, but if he's going on a spaceship, he should learn to run. You're going to investigate something.
He's also wearing a super heavy suit.
Yeah, you got to figure the boots on those things because they're mag boots.
Yeah,
those boots probably weigh 15, 20 pounds a piece.
That's pretty much the equivalent of me going out in full SCBA gear. And
all right, that's actually the end of my notes. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen to continue.
Kyle got us through the initial cutscene.
Pretty much.
Also, at this point, it's one of the first times, I believe the first time you see it, it's on the wall right after you get out of the elevator. This says, the only way to kill said creatures is to hit them in the limbs.
Yep.
Within the next 2 minutes of the game, they tell you another 3 times that you must hit them in the limbs to kill them. So it's kind of one of those,
First time they did that in a video game, though, right? Where like,
you had to dismember rather than shoot center mass. Yeah,
it was new when it came out, so they're trying to teach you to not just shoot center mass or headshots, because headshots are totally meaningless.
Yeah. So your first objective is to get the tram working, so that way you can at least move around on the ship and, at this point, hopefully reunite with Hammond and Kendra.
And the tram is kind of, it runs the spine of the ship, right?
Yeah, it's like a ship subway type deal.
Almost like the turbo lifts in the Enterprise.
Yeah, except these ones go, I believe,
horizontal.
Only go mostly
that's
horizontal. That's
because they have artificial gravity.
Well, yeah.
I think it would depend on how they level the decks. But the point that I was going to make is that the tram is the way that they serve to link all the levels together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah. And
can we take a moment to talk about the UI here? Oh my god, the UI is so well designed.
Yeah.
I have never seen anything like it in a game before this or even after, except for the sequels. It is just so well designed because you're not encumbered by a giant HUD in the corner of the screen kind of pulling you out of that, the suspension of disbelief. You know, you've got your health on your back, you've got the kinesis on the back, your ammo is a...
Yep, your health is like modeled along your spine, so if your spine is a full glow bar, then you're fully healthy.
And
if
your
it's
air.
dropped to half. Yeah, your air is a hologram on your back. And actually, the interface is like sticking off his collarbone, too.
Yeah.
So you can see it there. That's what he would be looking at. But they just project it out in front of you as a hologram. It works really well.
Yeah, it does. The ammo the ammo in whatever weapon you choose is going off, just off the top of the weapon.
Yep.
And, you know, just the way they did that interface was fantastic. I loved it.
The only thing that I know I've notated this to Kyle a couple times, and a lot of that's because... when I play horror games, I play, like, the full immersion, like, you are in the first person. Like, you can't actually see your own character. You're seeing it through only their eyes, which in turn would get rid of that interface. But in the other turn, it would have been nice if it was an option, you know, it'd be easier to fully submerge yourself into...
Go into first-person mode rather than third-person.
But that was my only complaint about it. The other thing that I really liked was the marker, like your little map thing, like you move your left hand.
Like shining on the ground.
Yeah, the objective pointer. The objective pointer was really nice.
It got rid of a lot of the, oh crap, where am I going? You know, am I going to waste time trying to figure out where I am in this giant ship? It's, okay, I'm following the blue line.
Yep.
Which helped keep the pace going, helped keep the suspense going, so you weren't getting frustrated and trying to figure out where you were going. It helped keep the story moving and keep you engaged.
Yeah. And it wasn't always there, too. Like, you could toggle it on and then it would go away.
Right.
So you could see, okay, it runs in this direction and it goes around a corner because this is cramped confines. And it's supposed to be a ship. It's not just a series of dissociated maps. It's supposed to be this one integral ship.
Yeah.
So you're wending your way through, interlocking decks. And, that little blue line was really helpful.
Yeah, I think if that wasn't there, I think people would get very frustrated, and then the frustration would pull them out of actually being immersed into the game, because now you're frustrated, you can't figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was definitely a big help for me. I used it quite often, trying to navigate.
Another little point too, like this goes hand in hand with the UI, is that the faces on the holovids that you get were surprisingly well modeled.
Yep.
Yes,
I don't think I ever noticed it before, but it's not anywhere near where we're at now in 2017 anyway. But there was genuine emotion in a lot of that.
Yeah, but I mean,
looks good.
Yeah, you've got to remember this game is 10 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say this game came out in 2007.
I mean, I'm trying to think of other games I've played recently that are new, and I still think the faces, at least in the holovids, were better. And I don't know if that's because it was pre-rendered somehow, and they were running a little picture-in-picture pre-rendered video or what, but I thought that was really, really well.
I mean, the whole game, even for being 10 years old, is still gorgeous. But all right, let's continue so we don't run it 3 hours again.
So we're on chapter 1, right? Or we're on chapter 2 now?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, chapter 1. What's chapter 1 called? Do we know?
New Arrivals.
New Arrivals.
New Arrivals. Okay, cool. Tell us about it.
So your first objective to get the tram working is there's a broken tram car on the the thing that switches the tram cars in and out for maintenance. There's a broken one on there that's jamming up the tracks. So
you got to put a new one in?
Yep, so you have to finish pulling the broken one off, so that way the fully functional tram can get by it without causing a giant cluster.
Yep.
So when you go do that, then you have to go to the maintenance bay, because now something else still isn't working. Now you have to go get the data board. You have to take it to the tram control in order to use the tram computer, which will then you'll be able to control the tram and boot it up, etc.
Yep.
And you get a audio call? No, it was a video
it was
call.
A video.
From Hammond and Kendra.
Who have survived.
Yep, who survived their little ordeal. They were hiding.
They were on the other side of the tram track.
If you look across, well, you couldn't look across because you didn't have access to the controls.
Yeah.
But, you can see them over there, and they, wave at you in this ridiculous...
Yeah. So, they report that they have found no survivors so far. At this point, one of the shuttles that you get to explodes when you attempt to load the damage report. I may have skipped a couple pieces.
Meh.
But, one of the
Get
shuttles...
back, another shuttle blows up on you, right?
Yeah, this is
After
the one...
things crawl all over it, freak you out.
Yep. So, the one shuttle, which was going to be your escape route, is now no longer an escape route because it's now an explosion.
So is that the end of chapter 1?
Let's fast forward.
There's one more big objective to the end of chapter 1 that leads to chapter 2.
Okay.
Is after the shuttle explodes, you find out that the captain of the Ishimura, which was Captain Benjamin Matthias?
Yeah, Matthias.
Yeah. Is dead. You're not sure how. You're not sure why. So that's your next big fetch quest is, okay, we're going to go find his body and figure out who, what, when, where, why he died.
Okay, so now that we've hit the end of chapter 1, we've got a couple weapon choices. When you played through, what did you primarily...
Plasma cutter.
Plasma cutter?
Yep.
See, I went with the pulse rifle.
Yeah, I'm sorry you make mistakes in your life.
I found the pulse rifle pretty useful.
I use the plasma cutter almost exclusively. Because
Yeah.
the flamethrower let me down. Every time I needed to use a flamethrower to kill those little, tripod thingies, there's never any air. I couldn't use the flamethrower. It was going, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong until I was like, oh, right, there's no oxygen for flame. So I just go back to the plasma cutter and stomping on everything.
See, when that's where the assault rifle, or the pulse rifle came in handy, because you didn't have to worry about oxygen. You still had that spray to get rid of them.
I don't know, one plasma shot usually took out half the crowd, so... I did use the plasma rifle occasionally, usually only when I was out of ammo, and I used the flamethrower until the oxygen ran out. Otherwise, I used the plasma cutter all the way through and my good old two-fashioned feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's mostly what the Let's Play used, was the plasma cutter.
I never even bought it. I ended up selling the plasma rifle halfway through the game just because I wasn't using it.
See, I had it fully upgraded.
I gamed the system a little bit because I knew roughly when I was going to get new suits. So I would sell everything that wasn't med packs or my plasma rounds. And so I had a fully upgraded plasma cutter by like the 3rd level.
See, I used the plasma rounds as credits fodder.
Yep, me too. Because I had so many. That and so many fuel tanks.
Yes.
You only ever needed spurts of the flamethrower, so I would just sell everything. I'd have like 1 plasma and 1 flame tank, and then I'd keep like 75 plasma cutter rounds on me, and that was it.
Plus,
So
the plasma cutter worked very, very nicely for chopping off limbs.
Yes. The line cutter works great for cutting them in half, but like, I don't need to do that. 1 leg usually takes it out. And then at the end, it was like 1 shot destroyed everything, so.
Yeah.
Plasma cutter's life.
All right.
So there's 12 chapters in the game. The last chapter is fairly short, right? So let's scoot through, until we hit another climax point. Chapter 2 is what? What's that one called?
Intensive care.
That's a fitting title.
Yes, it is.
So you get out of the shuttle. There's a big attack.
Tram, not shuttle.
Yeah, tram. One of like the little scare things that I was trying to briefly hash out with Travis was the whole, dead body things as soon as Isaac arrives is there.
Yep.
Which is the half-dead lady. McCoy is trying to take her to a shuttle, and then she dies, and this drops the kinesis module, which you can now use, which comes to be an extremely handy, useful tool. So now you have to, your next quest is to still go find the body of Captain Matthias.
Yep, and you're looking for his codes, right? The codes that are in his rig.
Yep.
It's your UI.
Yeah, pretty
the
much.
rig is the UI.
So in order to do that, I believe it's because where his body is, it's locked or something.
It's in the morgue.
Is it in the morgue?
It's
Yeah,
in the
because
morgue.
he's dead. We don't know why he's dead. We just know
At this
he's
point.
dead.
So you have to go to the med lab to get thermite to explode one of the doors or something.
Yes.
I don't
yes,
remember
you have to make
exactly.
a bomb, essentially.
So you go into the med lab to get the thermite, which is to make said bomb. This is one of the big points that I noticed is, so if you look around the walls, there's a whole bunch of basically human babies in green water and test tube cages.
Yeah, that was really concerning. What the heck are those doing on the Ishimura? It's an industrial ship. Why do they have embryos like that?
Yeah, like 9-month-old embryos, and there's also a list of newborn names. So it looks like the women would have their kids, and then they would stick them in these effectively fish tanks on a wall.
This is actually the first introduction of
The baby mutants.
The baby mutants with
Yeah.
the 3 tendrils that pop out and shoot at you.
The baby morphs.
Yeah, the baby morphs.
Fun to pick up and throw with kinesis.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird down in the med lab, because there's also drawers full of body parts.
Yep.
Which thus then leads to the mutants, where it just is like, here, have a head that has 3 tendrils and can walk on its own.
Very the thing.
Those are in the book.
Yep.
Yes, they are. They're very the thing. Some of the designs become much more like John Carpenter's version of the Thing than Alien or any Event Horizon or whatever.
So, just go forward. You go into zero gravity room. It's finally getting closer to the body. The game kind of gives you like a hint that you're getting closer to actually finding Captain Matthias with the audio file, stating that Captain Matthias actually quarantined the planet.
Yep.
Because stuff was going really bad on the planet, therefore no one in or out. We're just going to try and keep it all down there, which didn't really quite work.
But it was also more than that. It was also kind of like, let's wait and see what happens. So it was a little bit self-serving, or unitology serving anyway.
Yep. Which now you can finally get to the morgue door, use the bomb, blow it up, get the rig codes. And then you finally get to realize who Nicole Brennan is, which is
Isaac's girlfriend?
I was
Wife?
gonna say,
Yeah,
is it
I think it says
girlfriend,
ex-girlfriend.
wife, something?
Okay.
I think they broke up and she took a job on the Ishimura, or that she had taken a job on the Ishimura and that ended their relationship effectively. And so part of him coming to the Ishimura to check it out was to see if she's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, turns out, now that you can hear the voice, you realize the first video file that you see on their little shuttle, her, and now it kind of makes sense. She was a senior medical officer, basically stating, things are going real bad, we're not equipped to deal with this, I don't know what to do, we need help.
Yeah.
This is also the second time where you see there's the lady working on another body, she sees Isaac, turns and slits her own throat.
Yes, and
And
that is a
it's-
common theme between the book and the game.
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
People commit suicide, usually by slitting their own throat.
Occasionally hanging themselves, but most of the time it's...
So I think what's going on with these people, I think that's the marker, watching his progress.
Yeah,
But
it could
because
be
it's got that weird push back and forth between we want to kill everything and we want to converge everything, it's holding on, and then once it confirms he's there, or that somebody's doing whatever it wants, then it doesn't need those eyes anymore.
So it just gets rid of them.
It
Yeah,
gets
that
rid
makes
of 'em.
sense.
Another theory could be that they're hallucinations of Isaac.
Maybe. That's also possible.
Which...
Because
Because
there's a growing number of those across the game.
the farther and farther you progress into the game, the more and more those people killing themselves are more prominent.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also like science logs and audio files, which just add...
It builds the situation.
yeah.
Ishimura is doomed, and you're
Pretty
doomed
much.
because you don't have a way out.
The short version of the science log is that the senior chief science officer goes to Captain Matthias and says, hey, we should not bring the marker up right now because things are really bad at the colony ever since we dug this up. Let's leave it there. Let's not bring this infestation to the ship.
Yep, and I don't think we've discussed what the marker is yet, but it's integral to Dead Space. So do you want to
Yes.
describe it, Kyle?
Yeah, the book calls it the Tale of the Devil. The marker is essentially... I mean, you know more about this Dead Space universe than I do.
Yeah, well, I mean, within the game, it's like, it's the bad spiritual force, right?
Yeah.
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 But I never really got if it was sentient, so it looks like a big double helix root, almost.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's some sort of alien artifact, I guess? It's gotta be alien.
That's...
The
that's
original
the-
one was.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then the red one in the game is human?
It's man-made, yes.
It's man-made.
You find that out at the end of the game.
I may have overlooked
And
that.
in the book.
I thought that was one they dug up.
No, well, they're getting ready to make it. The
Yeah.
one they find in the crater is...
The black marker.
Yes.
So it's a semi-sentient alien device of unknown origin and also unknown purpose. But then it seems to be linked to the outbreaks of this disease or
Yep.
virus that causes human bodies to remake themselves in this horrible force
Yes.
that I guess in some way leads to a hive mind. And the book doesn't really break it down because I don't know, maybe it's like the xenomorphs. What is the purpose of the xenomorphs in the Alien series? I don't know if there is a real purpose. It's more mysterious to leave it be, maybe.
Maybe.
But yeah, so the marker is this thing that exists in the game as a kind of like a satanic antagonist.
I was going to say, essentially the antagonist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's what in the book that Altman is constantly fighting with, and pretty much in the game, Isaac
is doing the
fighting
same
against.
And so they found, so Jenn said that the chief scientist wants to not bring it up. The captain wants to bring it up because it's a symbol to the unitologists of their religion.
Yep.
Yes.
Like a guardian angel or something.
Pretty much it's, hey, we have found God, let's bring God onto the ship.
But that one was man-made?
Yes.
So the one on Earth is alien. The one on this other colony that...
Is a man-made replica
Man-made
of the one that
Okay,
was
I think
in
I
on
missed
Earth.
that.
Yeah, Kendra talks about it at the end of the book.
Yep.
I
Or
mean,
the end of the
End
yelling
of
at her.
the game.
End of the
Okay.
game.
During that whole fiasco
Where
with
you're
Kendra.
stuck in that room.
I think I was just
The-
shooting and yelling at her. I don't think I
The
was listening very closely.
decontamination chamber at the end of the game.
Okay, that's right before you fight the final boss.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we find out that there's disagreements about what to do with this, which follows along with the book too.
Yep.
And then how does chapter 2 wrap up?
So you go back to the tram after you get the codes off of the captain, and you also find that Hammond has put a mutant into an escape pod that was in the captain's nest to contain or control it, and ejected it to get it off the ship, which will play an important role later.
And then that sets up the next couple levels because they kind of float around the captain's nest in
Yep.
the bridge, right? Okay. So let's dig through 3, 4, and 5 quickly then.
Okay, so chapter 3 is called Course Correction. You find that there's no fuel in the engines. The gravity centrifuge is offline. You essentially go to engineering, refuel the engines, and then you turn the centrifuge back on. Which with the centrifuge, did you do the same mistake I did and run the wrong way and get killed by it?
Well, both you and the
I
Let's
spent a
Play
long
did.
time trying to hit it with stasis, thinking that was going to take care of it. Then it didn't, and I realized it was the notches along the outside, and I was
Yep.
like, oh, duh.
Which a lot of the notches you go into are, oh, there's a thing here I have to kill real quick.
Yeah,
oh, well,
stop happy.
I have to wait for this to go by anyway.
There's a lot of
Yep.
scorpions in there.
You get attacked by the giant tentacle. We find that Kendra has barricaded herself in the computer core.
So Kendra and Hammond are totally split up.
Yes.
Yes.
And it stays like that for the rest of the game, right? Those two.
For a good majority,
For
yeah.
Oh, they do come back together?
At the very end, I believe.
No,
they don't.
Yes, the rest of the game they are separated.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is where Kendra starts kind of trying to play you against Hammond.
Yeah, and you kind of get that thematic thing too, because the marker's always saying we should converge and you should give in to me and you should also destroy me. And so Kendra and Hammond become those two poles.
It's kind of the devil on the one side, angel on the other, even though neither are perfectly correct answers.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get to the engine room to restart the engines. This is where you first run into the organic growth on the walls.
Gross.
And then you find out that the asteroid defense system is offline.
Yep.
And that ends Chapter 3. Chapter 4 is Obliteration Imminent. You find out that the asteroid defense system is completely shot. Kendra calls Hammond out about the marker, denies knowing anything about the marker.
Yeah.
Because pretty much Kendra's stating that Hammond, yes, you know
It's
about
really
this,
suspicious.
you know about what's going on, and Hammond's like, no, I don't know anything.
Yeah, Hammond's really dodgy and his excuses don't make sense.
Yep.
And it seems super sketchy.
Hammond's able to restart to get the engines firing, and you're getting ready to move into an asteroid field created by the planet crack.
Yep. And so the goal of the Ishimura, too, this is relevant to the context of the game, but the goal of the Ishimura is to basically, like, deconstruct planets.
Yes.
Mhm.
And to take and refine enormous amounts of ore because Earth has been mined out.
Yeah.
And the other bodies in the solar system have been mined out at this point. So we're going beyond, very much like an Alien, where the Nostromo is dragging lots of mineral wealth back. The Ishimura is doing something kind of similar.
Similar,
Yeah.
yes.
And so part of ripping a planet apart involves lots of debris, and the debris is what's dangerous here.
You find a hull breach from impact on the asteroids. It's the first time you run into the vacuum of space, which all of those parts are done very well.
Yeah. It's really hard to do anything when every 30 seconds Isaac's choking to death.
I had mine upgraded to almost a minute and a half. I think almost 2 minutes.
At the end of the game I did, but at this point I had 30 seconds, and like with the 17 seconds left, going,
Yeah, and he
It's,
starts
you know,
moving slower, and
ugh. I learned to keep one oxygen tank on me after that.
you meet up with Hammond. Kendra doesn't trust Hammond, but Hammond warns Isaac that something is really big out there.
Yeah.
This is
Foreshadowing.
this is
I can hear something. I think it was like I can hear something really big, like lumbering about out there, and it sounds bigger than the normal, thump of the creatures.
Is this the this is after you've gone through the bridge once, right?
yes.
Mhm.
The bridge is spectacular.
Yes.
I really wish we could have had a pre-rendered cutscene or something showing that thing in action.
Yep.
Such a huge view.
This is when you come back from the engineering room and everything like that and restart the engines. You come back up, and
Mhm.
Hammond mentions that he hears something big moving around. This is the first time you run into a brute because it blasts through the wall.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
and that
and-
hole stays in the wall for the rest of the game.
Yep.
And they are a SOB to kill until you realize that there's a specific spot in their back that you have to hit
You've
them.
got a plasma cutter that's fully upgraded at this point, and you've got a fully upgraded kinesis rig. You like zap, boop, boop, and it's over.
You can also kinesis them, or not kinesis, stasis them,
Yep.
and get behind them and do it that
Yeah.
way. That was how I ended up having to do it.
Oh, I just because the plasma cutter's got such a wide range, I would just stasis them as soon as they showed up and then shoot them right in the armpits.
Yeah, and this is also where Hammond actually releases the escape pod with the mutant in it.
Because it's trying to break out of the escape
Which
pod.
is something
Yeah.
easy to forget, but it's kind of a
It's-
reference back to Alien, but it comes back into play later on in a
Yep.
horrific way.
You go to fix the asteroid defense system, and you find that one cannon that Hammond needs to get through the asteroid field is dead. It's got to be brought under manual control, which is where I stopped. Every single time I played this game on consoles, this is where I stopped, because the console controls on that were absolutely annoying.
They're clumsy.
They're
The clumsiness of the game overall, really, this is a low moment where it's just not sensitive enough for what you need it to do.
but on the computer, it was much more sensitive.
Mhm.
And you were able to do it a lot faster. You were able
Yeah.
to move the cannon around a lot faster because you weren't tied to an analog stick.
Yeah, and asteroids are rushing at the hull of the ship, and every time they impact, then you lose a percentage of your hull integrity.
Yep.
And if it drops to 0, the Ishimura goes kaboom.
Okay, so after you do this, The asteroid cannon is fixed.
Which makes the Ishimura safer in its orbit.
Yep. And you also find out that the oxygen levels are starting to poison the air supply. You find that out from Hammond because he's moved to hydroponics.
Yes.
That ends chapter 4, and we move on to chapter 5, which is Lethal Devotion.
It's chapter titles.
Yeah. You head to the chemistry lab. The door has recently been reprogrammed, making you think you're not alone. You're not the only.
The first time we find out that someone is alive?
Yes.
Okay.
Dr. Mercer.
The crazy Middle Eastern guy.
Yes.
Yep.
Whatever that accent is.
Yep. And we find out that Dr. Mercer is still alive, and he's wandering around. And it's actually Dr. Mercer that kills the captain, not Dr. Terrence.
He's like certifiably insane at this point.
And so, knowing what we know about unitology, he's a marker believer, right?
Yes.
Yes.
But he's
absolutely.
more fanatic than the captain?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Which plays into the lobotomization. He is creating
The creatures.
Yes, he's creating a way for the virus to make more of the creatures.
Okay, so he's kind of like Dr. Guth in the book.
Yes.
So where Dr. Guth is synthesizing life using the information that he pulls from the marker. Okay, I didn't realize that was... I knew he was experimenting, but I didn't realize he was...
Yeah, because Dr. Mercer realized that the bat-like creature thing has to, per se, feed on your body in order to turn it into a creature. You can't be living. The bat thing has to either kill you or you already have to be dead in order for it to turn you into a creature.
Yes.
Are we well past the point where we should probably say this is an M-rated game?
Yes.
Oh, oops.
As is the book.
Probably.
Oh, well.
If the books had the same ESRB rating, and the book would be mature as well.
Yeah. It's a mature game, folks. There's
Yes.
violence, dismemberment,
Lots of violence.
the occasional zombie nudity.
You see Dr. Mercer through the glass, and he says, "Let me show you children who will replace us." And this is the first time you run into the necromorph that Mercer has created.
Yes.
That
this
regenerates.
Is the
The
big
regen.
boss that is much more like the bad guy from Amnesia in terms of you can't permanently kill or disable. Whereas in Amnesia, you can really fight back.
Yeah.
This one you can dismember, but then after like 3 or 4 seconds of laying on the ground like a trussed turkey, it'll get up and chase you again.
Yep.
So you learn to use stasis, gird your butt, and run.
Pretty much. It's the whole, can I get you to stay down long enough for me to run away?
I learned my lesson a couple times because it was, can I get you to stay down long enough that I can stomp you to death? And the answer is always no. And it will beat and paint the walls with your innards.
Yep.
So I learned to stay away from it quickly.
The Let's Play did that a couple times too, was, oh, maybe we can get you down and then stomp you to death, and you just end up being like a giant
You just get
rubber
ripped
chicken.
apart.
Yep.
Yeah.
You go into hydroponics. You find that you can barely breathe.
Yeah, I like hydroponics. The change from
I
like gray and brown to suddenly green and pumpkins was really exciting.
Well, and the way that they did these specific creatures was very, very well done.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is where you run into the... What would you call them? The breathers?
The breathers is what I call them.
Yeah.
They have a big like sack on their back that they're...
Yeah.
They change the air around them.
Yeah.
They poison it.
Yep.
Pretty much their lungs are on the outside, and every time they take a breath, every bit of oxygen they bring in comes back out as pollution.
Now, with the necromorphs, which are the principal bad guy in the game, other than the humans that are twisted and psychotic because of the marker, did you guys get the feeling that the virus was changing them in deliberate ways to re-engineer its environment?
Yes.
Yep.
Like, because that was the feeling that I got, was everything that could be used as a weapon was forced in a way to become a weapon, and things that needed to be used for atmospheric control, the babies could be used for all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
Like, is that the point of the necromorph virus, is to utilize the human form for other tasks?
Yes.
Pretty much.
That-
The way that I saw it was pretty much they're using, which it's a big debate in the book with Altman, they're pretty much using the humans as a means to an end in order to repopulate. Well, I guess it would be repopulate wherever they are with their own...
Or converge.
Yeah,
Capital
converge.
C.
Yeah. Converge, and make this world theirs, but it's one of those, they don't really care if the humans are still there, they just know that they need humans, they need their bodies in order to create their own race.
So I
and to
got the
thrive.
flood feeling from the necromorphs.
Yes.
Like when I
Yeah.
started to think about that, I was like, oh, this is a lot like the flood. Although it seems like the flood just creates like combat forms to defend the grave mind.
Was it the Gravemind?
Grave mind, yeah. So okay, so it is a similar thing. I like that trope. It's really alien because we don't use dead bodies for anything except fertilizing lawn in particular lots. Sometimes eating on a boat.
If you're really hungry and that person doesn't have scurvy.
Or
I don't care if they got scurvy.
eating in the mountains.
Gotta do what you gotta do. Man, the Donner would be a great name for a ship in this game series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
CEC Donner. We eat our own.
Okay. We run into Dr. Mercer again, behind the glass, and he says, the world belongs to the children. And you run into the regenerating necromorph again.
Does that not support my theory that they were using the babies to... Because that was part of what got me thinking on that track, was thinking back to what Mercer spouts at you. The world belongs to the children, and it's the children of unitology, which are grown for that purpose.
Pretty much they have a never-ending, quite a long while supply based on that room of babies that they can grow into children and brainwash from day one to be, hey, come take me, I want to be your mutant creature thing.
Should we talk at any point about what unitology is? We've brought it up many times over the last 20 minutes, but who's bold enough to go forward?
Unitology is Scientology in space.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
And you worship an alien artifact. Everybody's going to approach unitology differently because it's a direct assault on the idea of organized religion for a purpose. I am speaking as an atheist, and to me, it's a funny caricature of Scientology. But to somebody who's got belief, it might be a little more personally insulting. And watching the way that unitologists in the game manipulate their environment to forward their goals is still very relevant 10 years later. So for me, unitology is more than just a caricature of Scientology, because that's what it is. And even to a little bit the Latter-day Saints or the Mormons, the way that they advertise is very Mormon. And the way that they talk and behave is very Mormon, but with distinctly scientific flavor. Scientological?
Sure.
Yeah, Scientological paprika.
Yep. This is when you go and fight the Leviathan, which is the big bad boss in hydroponics, which was the original reason you were going to hydroponics, because it's feeding on the food stores.
Yep.
Which was a really cool 0G boss fight.
It was really easy for me with my plasma cutter.
It was really easy with the assault rifle, too.
It was easier with the plasma cutter.
I was going to say the Let's Play kind of just flew through that part at that point.
Yeah, that did not require a lot of effort.
No,
Done.
but very well designed.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
It was cool, too, because you end up in more of those 0G cylinder chambers, and each time you're always like, I really hope it doesn't start spitting those explosive balls at me. It was a cool boss fight.
You find Dr. Mercer's lab down there as well.
Yep.
Catchy.
With a lot of the stasis chambers.
They're like your typical bad guy villain clone pods.
Yeah, full of the necromorphs in different states.
Yeah, it looked a lot to me like a cryo type chamber, but that's...
It was like, what do you call it, menagerie. Right?
Yeah.
Like, look at my trophies.
And that ends Chapter 5. Chapter 6 is Environmental Hazard.
Another good title.
Very good title, all the way throughout the game. You meet Dr... No, you don't meet. Yeah, you get a call from
log, I believe.
Dr. Elizabeth Cross, the hydroponics director.
Oh, her, not the other dude. Yeah, that's an audio log.
Yeah.
Yes.
Her and Mr. Temple, right?
Yep.
The engineer.
Yep, I believe he's an engineer.
You find she mentions that there's a surplus of plants on the Ishimura. This is before everything goes nuts, and she wants to share the food surplus with the colony, but the captain says no.
Because again, the colony is an experiment.
Then it's also the fact of anybody who goes down to take said food down is going to risk bringing crazy back.
Yeah, and we know that they don't have a surplus of automatic shuttles because there ain't one for you to get off when you need it.
Not anymore, because it went boom.
This is actually, I kind of get the parts confused. This is actually where you find the breathers.
Yeah, you hunt for the breathers.
For a while.
There's like, what, 6 of them? 5
6,
of them?
7, 8, 9, somewhere.
I think it's like
Yeah.
5 or 6.
But
You
it
have to
kind of
find
brings you
them
all over this deck. And each time they're in a little weird place, they're in a corner, and they're, gagging away and breathing obnoxious farts into the air.
Yep, there's one in...
It's like a stairwell type deal.
no, there's one that's in the food pod. And, again, got a little mixed up. This is where the Leviathan is.
Okay, so the Leviathan does follow the breathers.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. The Leviathan's a giant butthole.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
You also get a audio log from a holovid call from Nicole saying,
Yes.
Isaac, where are you?
This is when the hallucinations begin, right?
Yes.
The games begin. So
Yes.
now the marker is in his head.
Yep.
Yep.
And it's another, which is why I think the whispers getting louder and more frequent led right up to getting this call
Yeah.
from Nicole.
It's focused on you now.
The marker's like, all right, you want to mess with my stuff? Okay, let's play a game.
But now you find out that Kendra hatches a plan to get help, and you have to go to the mining deck to find an SOS beacon. So that ends chapter 6, and we go into chapter 7, Into the Void, which again, very aptly named.
Stupidly literal title.
You go to the mining section of the ship. You can throw rocks around and stuff like that.
That's fun.
You hallucinate Nicole.
This is not in the holovid, right?
No, this is you
her.
literally see her.
Again, you can't shoot at it. Just saying.
Yeah.
Well, she is also a hallucination.
You can also, like, even if you just point, like, especially the plasma cutter, how it has that little, like, directional...
It puts it down.
The little laser thing actually goes straight through her.
Oh, does it?
Yes.
I never noticed that.
No.
You can't kill any NPC in this game, and I didn't notice that the reticle goes right through her. That's
The little
good little
laser.
touch.
But you see Nicole. She says, "Come with me. I can help you." And she helps you get the SOS beacon, and then just disappears.
Like, literally, she's there 1 minute, and then just...
Yeah.
She's there 1 minute. You turn to look at something else that
Yep.
catches your attention, and you come back, and she's gone.
Yeah.
At this point, you think, I started thinking, is Nicole actually on the ship, or is she hallucination?
That's right. You're now in Virgin Eyes territory, just like Jenn.
Yes.
Okay, I knew, which is why I was trying to kill her. Just to see.
You still no word from Hammond.
We think Hammond's dead at this point, right?
Yes. You get the beacon. You go to the mining subdeck. Detach the tethers on the asteroid and plant the beacon on
That
the
is
asteroid.
an awfully spherical asteroid.
It's being cut.
I don't care. I don't like it.
No.
I get it. I just, this part, because where you have to detach the gravitational tethers, which are the same kind of technology that brought your ship in, because again, they do a really good job using the same couple kinds of technology in many different applications, just like you do in any major industrial workplace anyway. Same few principles applied to many different applications.
Yep. This is a 10-ton rock that they're trying to keep in position.
Yep, and they're cutting it with lasers that kind of like sweep back and forth gyroscopically. And unless you know exactly what you're doing, you can land on the rock and plant the beacon anywhere. And then you get cut to pieces by the lasers.
Yup.
I tried so many times to figure out what to do before this is the only part I gave in. I had to look at a walkthrough. I was like, I don't get it, because I didn't think I could walk through the edge of it.
I didn't have to look it up after many, many attempts at trial and error trying to stasis the big gyroscopic lasers.
Tried that.
The last try before I actually figured it out, I went to do the 0G jump outside. And just floated out into space.
You went the wrong direction.
And was like, oh, this is the way you're supposed to go, but not quite that
I gave up.
way.
I was so
Not that
embarrassed with myself for having to give up. I almost never look up walkthroughs, and as a result, I often don't finish games. And on this one, I was like, I got to get through this. I've spent 25 minutes on this part. I got to get through it. I'm just going to give up. What the heck do I do? And as soon as I looked up the answer on Google, and it was the first thing that came up, it was like, walk around the rock. I was like, I'm an idiot.
Yep.
Didn't even occur to me.
Yep, I felt the same way when I finally figured it out.
Clever on their part.
Very
some
clever
of
on
the
their
environmental puzzles are really well put together.
Yep. So that ends chapter 7, and now on to chapter 8, which is search and rescue.
And your new fetch quest now is go to the bridge.
Yep.
Yep.
To fix a
the
comms
relay.
relay.
Get back to the bridge, right?
Yep.
Yep.
You get a message from the USS Valor,
Which is...
what they think is a rescue ship.
Okay, and it's military in nature.
Yes. You find out later that it is military, and they were loaded for bear. Like, they had missiles and everything like that. They were loaded for bear.
So it was not just a recon ship.
No.
Which is what it was presented as originally.
Yes. It was presented as a recon ship that just happened to be in the area and catch the SOS beacon. So you go to the bridge to fix the comms array. You also figure out that through audio messages and stuff like that the USS Valor has picked up the escape pod.
Yep, that Hammond released.
That Hammond jettisoned with the necromorph in it.
I didn't think about it, but until just now, until you said it the way that you said it. But that's another connection to Alien. Because the Nostromo was not wandering randomly through space when it happened to get the distress beacon from the LG planet. The people that planned it sent the Nostromo past it. It was deliberate. And there was a reason they were there. So the Valor is the fact that Valor is there to pick up the SOS when it does, it's kind of deliberate.
Yep.
Yeah, the Valor pretty much was stationed.
Yeah, you
to sit there and wait for the Ishimura to ask for help.
That was
then it was also on a seek and destroy.
Yeah,
you get thrown anyway.
Kendra tries to contact the Valor, no response. She gets a video back of the Ishimura, or not the Ishimura, the Valor, and the Valor is just got these necromorphs all over it because they picked up the escape pod.
That's a good connection. I love the way that the game
it.
seems. Yeah, which is always a mistake. Don't ever open an unknown escape pod. It's either got droids with rebel plans in it, or it's got necromorphs.
Just look in the window, guys. Come on.
The Valor crashes into the Ishimura. You finally get a message from Hammond. Hammond says that someone has been blocking his rig remotely. And he tells you to go head to the cargo bay to help. That's all you get.
Yeah, we don't know who's blocking him.
Who's actually blocking Hammond out.
That moves us on to Chapter 9, which is called Dead on Arrival. You find out that the Valor ship is prepped for war, not a search and rescue.
Mm-hmm.
Hammond's signal gets blocked again. Isaac is trying to get on the Valor to get the Singularity Core. Mutants are on the Valor ship.
You also know that Hammond is already on the Valor.
You find out Hammond is no longer blocked and he's on the Valor. You also get a message from Dr. Terrence Kine to return the marker to the planet or all humanity is doomed. The Church of Unitology is wrong.
You also find out that all of the Valor soldiers had the built-in stasis units in their body armor, which turns into the fact that when they turn into the creatures, the necromorphs, it mutates and makes them super fast.
Is that why that's happening?
Yep.
Oh, I thought it was just because they were in good shape.
No.
It's their built-in stasis units.
All right, okay.
So you get the Singularity Core going through that stupid furnace room, which, as long as you time it properly, you won't die or catch fire. You then run into Hammond, who is on the other side of glass, and he gets brutally murdered by a brute.
Yep.
You watch the brute just rip him to pieces.
Also,
I avenged him the moment it set foot within my side of the glass.
As did I.
Stasis, boop, boop, both armpits, it's dead. Then I went and looked at Hammond and was sad for him.
You find out you need to evacuate the Valor due to a failure of fuel containment. The Valor explodes, and now you're back on the Ishimura, and that's the end of Chapter 9. Okay, so that moves us on to Chapter 10, which is called End of Days. You go into the crew quarters, and you find a bloody shrine. Creepy. You got to find the navigation cards for the shuttle.
Because at this point, Kine has told you there's a second shuttle, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so the issue with it, though, is that it doesn't have good nav cards, and so you need to find
3 of them.
3 of the nav cards in order to restore it to functioning starship status.
Pretty much, it's brain dead. You need to go find it a new brain.
You find the Z-Ball Court. There's a nav card inside. You get a message from Terrence Kine when you come up through this little red hallway saying that he's not going to give you access. He needs to know that Isaac is on his side and to bring him the nav cards for the shuttle.
Also, right after you get out of the Z-Ball Court, one of the big things that connects it to the book is there I believe it's a written article type thing that you can pick up, which I don't think you did because I brought it up to you.
Is this the History of Unitology article?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did pick that up. I read it.
There's a laundry list of things, but the one thing it does mention is 200 years ago, Michael Altman, who's
All be praised.
also the protagonist of the book, blew the whistle on the marker, who ended up having a very mysterious death, which then increased unitologists because a lot of people thought that Altman was a martyr.
All be praised.
Altman be praised.
So,
you find out that Dr. Mercer was the one who finally ended up bringing up the marker, and he was the one who killed the captain of the Ishimura. He's continuing to kill crew members in a ritualistic fashion with the spike to the face. And every time he does, he says, embrace them.
Yeah, embrace eternity, right? And he kills Temple, who is one of the surviving crew members and engineers, much like Isaac trying to go and solve and scuttle problems together.
he had him tied to a chair and then murdered him.
Well, to be fair, he sent him on to the next step of life.
Anyway, you go through a bunch of the crew quarters and everything like that and find the nav cards. You run into Mercer's regenerating necromorph again. This is when you throw him into cryostasis.
Now you have to go see Dr. Kine. And Kendra says that, Kine, you need to be really careful because Kine is insane. He's dangerous. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Pretty much don't go get killed.
You find out from Dr. Kine after you present the nav cards to him that the shuttle's shock point drive is destroyed, which I'm guessing is their FTL drive.
I think that's the idea, yeah.
He keeps referencing Amelia. This is where you actually find out that the mutants are called necromorphs, and they're controlled by a hive mind on the planet.
Yeah, if you're not careful, you'll miss that point.
Yep.
But it's kind of important.
And the marker is pretty much, without the marker in the planet, the hive mind is going insane, which
It's active.
basically you put the cork back in the bottle and everything calms down. But with the cork out of the bottle, the crazy comes out.
Yep,
Yeah.
that was the analogy he used, and a very good analogy. This is also where you find the note from the first officer about the unitologists, and you find out that the captain of the Ishimura was one. You find an audio log from the captain of the Ishimura.
Justifying the colony and the quarantine, right?
Yep, and the church had tasked him with this pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Because the Ishimura is not technically supposed to be there.
It's a quarantined solar system, right?
Yes.
Like nobody's supposed to be there
Yep.
at all. And that's because the CEC and the EarthGov, which is the United Nations of the future under one single government, has been experimenting. This is where I got a little lost because I thought they had planted a colony with the marker there. I didn't realize that was the man-made marker. So they picked a planet, they put the marker there, and then they built a colony around it to see what would happen, right?
Pretty much.
And then they probably seeded it with babies
Pretty
from
much.
the ships. Okay. We are the real monsters.
And then this is where you have the final battle with the regenerating necromorph, where you make him extra crispy. Dr. Kine meets you at the shuttle and takes the shuttle to the flight deck, which is the first area you crash into with your repair shuttle. And then you're trapped in that little room, and Mercer shows up and turns himself into a necrophage, or a necromorph.
He proceeds to yell, "Let the future take its course and gaze upon the face of God," and then lets the bat thing turn him.
Yep.
And then you head to the tram and you hear more singing.
Yep.
I missed a lot of the singing.
A lot of it's really quiet.
High, quiet and high-pitched.
Yeah, I wouldn't hear it.
That leads us to Chapter 11, Alternate Solutions. You load the marker up to the flight deck. Multiple enemy fight in the bay with some sort of Leviathan tentacle.
Is this the first time you lay eyes on the marker
Yes.
itself?
Yes.
And it's got red all over it. My initial thought was, is it like just tinged red, or is that blood everywhere? But I think it's
I think it's
tinged
the rock.
red.
Yeah, I think it's the rock.
the rock.
Because the first one in the book is referred to as the black marker.
one.
This is the red,
Right.
and I believe there's a blue marker in 2.
The marker gets loaded into the shuttle. Kine gets shot and killed by Kendra, and Kendra steals the shuttle.
This is where we find out that Kendra is actually the backstabbing, treasonous that she accused Hammond of being.
This is also where you find out that this marker was the man-made one.
Yep, that she's here
Okay.
specifically for the
I must have
marker.
missed this one.
And that the marker was man-made and reverse-engineered from a relic found on Earth and placed on Aegis 7 as an experiment. the hive mind containment with the marker that Kine was babbling about is actually true.
Okay.
Kine's not just nuts. That's actually what's going on. The
Okay.
marker controls the hive mind on the planet. You get a message from Kendra. Nicole says she's in the flight room and needs help. Nicole says that she can pilot that Isaac can pilot the shuttle from the control station.
And the little alien language stuff everywhere.
So you bring the shuttle back in on the automated system. Kendra ejects from the shuttle, and Nicole says Kendra can't escape her fate. No one can. And then she disappears again. Which leads us to Chapter 12, Dead Space.
Dead Space.
You're now planet-side. Nicole says to return the marker to the pedestal and make us whole again.
And on the way down in the shuttle, Nicole, it seems like this is where, like, Isaac completely breaks. Nicole keeps saying, this is the way it should be, I knew you would find me, while they're sitting, like, co-piloting the shuttle, and you can see that that's where Isaac kind of takes his severe turn for the worse.
You find an audio log in the tether control advising that no one landed on the colony due to a shuttle crash.
Thanks, Bryce.
There's a firefight while moving the marker through after the first shuttle. Nicole tells you that the power has to be restored.
Yeah.
Suddenly, there's a no gravity portion. How is there 0 G on a planet?
That too bothered the crap out of me.
In the fan blade tunnel.
Yeah, the little fan blade, the maintenance tunnel.
That really bothered me.
So you place the marker back on the pedestal. Nicole walks out from behind it and says, "We are whole again," and then disappears into a flash of light. Kendra returns to take the marker after you go into that little decontamination chamber. She returns to take the marker back and shows the full video from Nicole, which shows her killing herself. Yep.
Says that she wishes she could talk to someone. She's very sorry. Everything's falling apart. She can't believe what's happening. It's strange in such a little thing. She loved Isaac and wanted him to see him again. Injects herself with the arm with something and then dies.
That's right. She injects herself. She doesn't slit her own
Yeah,
throat.
so it's the same, like, self-murder.
Same process. Kendra calls Isaac insane, and that he was a pawn of the marker the whole time. You get released from the little decontamination. You go back to where the shuttle is, and Kendra is squashed with a giant tentacle.
And the hive mind emerges.
Isaac gets on the shuttle and takes off just as a hunk of the planet hits the planet and explodes.
What did you think about this final boss fight? I thought it was weak.
Yeah, I did too.
I feel like
it was very telegraphed.
A lot of timing issues.
I just shuffled back and forth.
Yeah, that's all I did.
Once.
Was it the first Mass Effect? The one with the human baby reaper?
Second.
Was it the second one? That's the only thing I could think of was, oh, let me pop up here. Oh, let me wait. You have to wait. Oh, now you can shoot me in my mouth. Oh, now we're going to repeat for the next 5 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a weak boss fight.
Yeah, it was. After the two Leviathan fights, this was really weak. So as the shuttle's going through space, Isaac takes off his helmet. The video of Nicole restarts. He immediately shuts it off. He hallucinates Necromorph jumping at him. The screen flashes with the marker language and the credits roll. Okay, so that's the game. I think we already we talked about how we all enjoyed the game.
Yep.
You know, like I said before, I mean, this was the first time for me through the second half, and I really enjoyed it. And almost immediately after I finished the first one, I was looking to see where I could get the second one, what was going to be the best option, because I played on Origin, but unfortunately couldn't get it at the moment, and ended up playing Fallout. But
now we have it, so there we go. My other thing is I'm highly curious as to, okay, that marker on that planet's destroyed. Isaac's, like, now certifiably insane. Kendra's dead.
Kendra's
Hammond's
definitely dead. Hammond's
dead. Everyone else is dead.
Which is a very similar situation to Ripley and Alien.
Yeah,
Yep.
Who's going to believe her story?
Yep.
Well, pretty much that, and where does Isaac go now that no one's going to believe him? He's pretty much certifiably insane, and he's still probably going to be hallucinating his dead significant other, Nicole X thing. Where does that take us?
It sets up for the second game. That's
Which
what it does.
Is a very good ending because I don't necessarily want to say cliffhanger, but it kind of is.
It's a high note.
All right, so that moves us on to the book.
Dead Space Martyr by B.K. Evenson. The book is a prequel. It would have been published around the time the second game was coming out in 2010. So it was written when the game was already kind of old. You know, the game had 2 years under its belt at that point. 3 years at that point. Okay. So it is, just from the back of the book, we did this with Mass Effect Andromeda Nexus Uprising, but the back of the book says, "Praise Altman. We have seen the future, a universe cursed with life after death. It all started deep beneath the Yucatan Peninsula, where an archaeological discovery took us into a new age, bringing us face to face with our origins and destiny. Michael Altman had a theory that no one would hear. It cursed our world for centuries to come. This, at last, is his story." And like Jen said, our first introduction to Altman be praised, is in the game when you read that text log that gives us a history of unitology. And this book kind of expands on that text log enormously. Yep. So it's a prequel to Dead Space 1, and it is told from a variety of perspectives.
There's lot of perspectives.
Something like 8 different focal characters that are meaningful to the story. But the primary character is Michael Altman, who becomes the prophet, the unwilling prophet and martyr of unitology. So the prologue is a very vague opening of someone being attacked by a monster that, if you've played the game, you'll know as a necromorph. I thought it was utilitarian. It was simple compared to the Mass Effect Andromeda prologue.
Yep.
Really short.
My only note for the prologue was much better than ME:A:'NU.
Yep. I dug it. It's scary. It's kinetic with like a lot of movement and a lot of actual, fright, because it feels contained and a little claustrophobic. And it kind of apes a tight-knit, low ammo moment from the game itself. And then whoever it is in the prologue, which we'll find out later, gets torn in half. Yeah. So the way that the book is divided is into 7 parts, and each part contains a variety of chapters. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the chapters that make up each part, and then we're going to stop to talk about that part and whether or not it's working as a book, and making the connections to the games. So part 1 is called Puerto Chixculub, which is the primary location for the whole book. And it opens with the first chapter is about a boy named Chava, who is a South American boy. And he wakes up early to bad dreams. Everybody seems to be having bad dreams, but his are particularly vivid. We learn that he lives in Central America. He lives in a shack with his family, so we know we're dealing with impoverished people. So Chava goes out for a walk, and then he sees something that he doesn't know what it is in the sand on the beach. Nobody else seems to be paying any attention to it. The other grown fishermen are just ignoring this thing that's kneeling in the beach, but is this grotesque, malformed human being thing. And it freaks him out. And it's well written.
Very well written.
It's very well written. The other thing is when he's walking up to it, he hears the whispers in a foreign language.
Yep.
And the closer he gets to the thing, that reminded me a lot of like the breather thing that you found in...
Yep. I actually have that quote highlighted too.
Something in there.
As he approaches, something lingered in his head. A noise, a strange sound, a whispering. It was saying words, but in a language he couldn't understand, so softly that he couldn't even tell where one word stopped and the other started. He tried to force them out, but though it receded, it didn't go away. It just hit himself somewhere deep in the back of his skull, nagging at him, which is creepy.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
But it sets up the constant head games from the marker very well.
Yeah, the constant psychological pressure. So in Chapter 2, we meet Michael Altman be praised, and James Fields, who are 2 geologists working in Chixculub. And they work for a mining resource lab, and they discover that there's a gravitational anomaly in the Yucatan crater, or the Chixculub crater, which I interpreted it to be the one where the dinosaurs got killed.
Yeah.
Like that giant crater off the Yucatan Peninsula.
Yep.
So they discover there's a gravitational anomaly. Something's a little weird about it. And they start to bat theories back and forth, although Fields isn't really into this. He's kind of a deadpan character until the second half of the book. Just kind of collects a paycheck and does what they tell him to do.
Yep.
Altman, however, is very active, very curious, a little defiant, a little aggressive. And I thought that the way that they conversate in this chapter is a good bit of characterization through dialogue.
Yeah.
That's tough to do, and for them to do it right off the bat like this, just like they did with Chava and the little boy's kind of stream of consciousness, shows that B.K. Evenson knows what they're doing as well.
Yep.
That was it for me for chapter 2. Anything else?
Altman and Field, they are geophysicists.
Geophysicists are not geologists.
Nope.
Right? In chapter 3, Chava moves up to the thing on the beach. It's horrendous. It's struggling to stay alive, I think. And it suddenly becomes aware of him, so he runs away. And it's a very The Thing-like moment. Like, it's up to something. It's clearly messed up and not human, but kind of draws people in. I thought the description of the thing itself was really creepy.
Yes.
And B.K. Evenson does a great job of describing these things.
Yeah, it paints a very vivid image of this creature.
It's also worth noting here that we're only like 8 pages into the book. The short, snappy chapters are really beneficial in the beginning. And I at this point, because I had done 3 chapter summaries in like 8 pages, I was like, I hope the book doesn't stay like this. Because I wrote more for this book than I wrote for our previous novel. Substantially more.
I did too.
In chapter 4, Altman realizes that Field is just going to file a report about the anomaly, and he's kind of disgusted by this because Field is, again, just a paycheck collector. And Altman feels compelled to find out about the anomaly himself. He wants to know, what is this bizarre thing that we didn't expect to see? He is, we get more of the characterization. So Altman is a young go-getter. Fields is just a company man. And they bring that out a lot in the characterization through the dialogue. I really like that. It feels like a lot of attention was given to the way that these characters speak, just like in the game, because most of the narrative comes through the audio interaction between Isaac and, well, the other characters talking to Isaac.
Yep. This chapter, Field, the way I described it in my notes is Field is established as a 100% by-the-book bureaucrat.
Yeah, he's a bureaucratic scientist.
Yep.
I also do like the way that scientists are depicted in the book, just off the bat. They are not all Einsteins. They are just as variant and diverse as any other group of humans.
Yep.
And we get a lot of different pictures of what scientists can be like in this book. Previous books that we've read have really suffered from just using archetypes, and that got embarrassing and frustrating quickly. In this one, you've got a go-getter who's really curious, you've got a bureaucrat who knows what his job is and is kind of more of just a data analyzer rather than a researcher or theorist. We get Scud later on, who will not say anything that is not verifiably empirically true.
Yep.
To the point of frustrating everybody else. You've got Showalter and Ramirez and
which both of those are briefly brought up in 4.
Yep.
Because Field confirmed the reading the Quake with Ramirez and Showalter.
Yeah, and this is where we get to introduce to the scientist posse. So Altman spends the whole afternoon calling around, but ultimately can't really get anywhere with it.
Yep. This is also where he receives the call from an unknown caller.
Yes, and the unknown caller says, "We know you've been calling around, or I know you've been calling around. Will you meet me at a bar and maybe we can put our information together?" Which he's skeptical of course, at first, because that is part of his character. In chapter 5, Chava is greeted by an ancient wise woman named the Bruja, who claims the bad dreams that they're all having are signs of the chixculub, which we then learn is the devil's tail. And it's a major symbol from the game. It's the marker. They don't call it that right away, but if you've played the game, you recognize what it is.
Yep.
She claims that if they can put it back to sleep, then they will survive. If not, they're all doomed. And it's worth noting that Bruja means witch in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know your Spanish, then you might have missed that and just wondered what a bruja is. It was a little interesting that Chava lives in a town named the Devil's Tail.
Yeah.
But we're in America. We've got lots of town names that nobody knows what they actually mean. I mean, look at all the Native American town names that we've got.
Yeah.
They also brought up here that they were calling the creature an Ixtab. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
Which pretty much is, quote from the book, is the goddess of suicide, the hanged goddess, the goddess of the end. She gathers near those who are dead by uncertain means, and she's a very harsh mistress, which is said by the Bruja to Chava, which fits the book and the marker and the game all very well.
Another point to make about this chapter is the legend around the Bruja says that she is over 1,000 years old and lived in the time when the Spaniards killed all of the Mayans. So she is fabled to be over 1,000 years old.
I thought this was really interesting. The way that they portray her it's not anything quite like what you get in the game, but it's creepy in and of itself. It's a horror novel. In chapter 6, I have it labeled as 9. Altman goes home instead of the bar. He ignores the phone call because he's just too skeptical. He thinks it's probably some crazy person. But then when he gets home, his girlfriend Ada reiterates the weirdness that's going on. In fact, what she says is almost word for word what the Bruja had said. And hearing that, Altman's like, all right, okay, there's enough signs pointing in a given direction here. I'm going to go to the bar.
Ada notes that she had the anthropological equivalent of the anomaly.
Because all of a sudden they start changing their cultural identity.
Their legends begin to change, which never, and she explains that never happens in the anthropological world.
Yeah, the way that I imagine this would be like if all of a sudden your family started telling you stories about another family. All these Christmases that you were never around for because they didn't exist until just, a few weeks ago.
Yep.
In chapter 7, which Altman hasn't gotten to the bar yet, we're switching over again because these are short, snappy chapters. The Bruja leads her people in a ritual burning and dance of the thing on the beach. In a neat scene that felt eerie because it seemed as if there was almost an instinct to it. Yes. Not that they had known the behavior, but that kind of the way that your body takes over occasionally and decides to autopilot something, that this ritualized dance and cleansing was some weird instinct that was just ingrained in the people, of Chixculub and the Yucatec. And that was creepy. And the logic here behind what she's doing is essentially Warhammer 40k, burn the Xeno.
Yeah.
Which works. The thing burns away, leaving a dry husk, and mostly just the charred skeleton, which is worth noting because that skeleton stays on the beach.
Yep. And the skeleton looks almost
vaguely human,
like a burnt human type deal.
Yeah, I got the Thing vibe from this.
Yes.
In the way that you see the remains of the Thing that look vaguely human, but like maybe somebody twisted it for some reason.
Yep.
And I really like that because I love the Thing. It's my favorite.
So do I.
Also, we get our quick little introduction here to the nameless drunk, which they steal the drunk's liquor in order to douse the breather and then set him on fire. In Chapter 8, Altman and his contact finally meet at the bar, and after learning that the bar is gross and seedy, Altman is approached by an awkward dude who acts all paranoid. He claims to be a communications technician and says that he's discovered a shady corporation named Dredger Corp. Dredger Corp, right?
Dredger Corp.
Okay, I have Dredger Corp in here. So I think I was thinking of the Drudge Report. So Dredger Corp is supposed to be covering up this strange static pulse that is being picked up on the phone lines. Altman hasn't heard of this before, but it catches his attention because now it's popping up at the same time as the gravitational anomaly and also the sociological anomaly or anthropological anomaly. They share information after this guy who turns out to be named Hammond acts all weird.
Different Hammond.
A different Hammond. Yeah, this is Charles Hammond. I don't think they can be related because this Hammond bites the bullet real early in his life.
Yeah. I think it's just a coincidence in a name.
Well, I mean, it also could have been like an uncle something or other.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know why they chose.
I was curious.
It bothered me a bit that they did that because it's like the Star Wars effect.
Yeah, I had to look back to the beginning of that, and I was like, wait a minute, this is 200 years before. How? But then I was like, wait, this one's Charles Hammond, the other one's Zach. So
after listening to Hammond rant effectively, Altman basically dodges out on him, leaving him behind. And we get this paranoid moment from Hammond's perspective, very briefly, where we see that he is either completely already nuts or he's already being affected by the marker because he starts to have like this schizophrenic compulsion about being safe and secure and whether or not he's really being followed. And it's creepy. It's written from a really unsettling, unhinged mindset. This is also the first time that Dredger Corp is mentioned. They're going to be part of the antagonistic forces working in the book. It's a really dumb name for a company, right?
Dredger Corp?
Dredger Corp.
I think
they're a mining company.
I don't care.
And I think it fits because you think of like dredging something, like dredging a pond. It's like shady, nasty crap work that no one wants to do. But also at the same time, the stuff that Dredger Corp does is shady and nasty.
No, it fits their character. I just think it's a stupid company name.
Yeah,
but
too.
also, it sounds like something that some first-year intelligence operative would put together for what is very obviously a front, right? By the end of the book, it's a front.
Oh, yeah.
We know it's a front. So it just sounds like some crappy government throwaway name. I got the feeling here that it's the marker that's whispering.
Yes.
This is the first step. And we don't know this in the book, but having played the game and been familiar with it, I was able to make that connection. It's the marker beginning to whisper, beginning to waken up.
It's also when they learn that it is at the heart of the crater.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so chapter 9. Chava walks the Bruja back to her hut, only to find her corpse in the hut. He begins hearing voices and sees strange markings on the wall.
Super creepy scene.
Yes, very. The Bruja has slit her own throat.
Yep. And as he was looking at the symbols on the wall, voices were flooding his mind, including the Brujas, and then he ran away.
I got a kind of the Stand vibe from this.
What?
Scene. Have you read the Stand? It's the way that the Bruja is being used and manipulated made me think of Mother Abigail.
Yes, I didn't fully make that connection with that, but yeah.
This is a really weird scene. This is also the first time in the book that we get the apparent vicious suicide of
Mutilation
and cutting their own throat.
Yep.
Except we don't see it happen. We only see the remains.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. This is also where, because I'd played the game, I knew that this was a hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
That Chava is now one of the first locals to begin hallucinating.
Mm-hmm. Also, skipping through time.
Yes.
If you notice that with the hallucinations, there's points where these characters seem to skip a bit through time, and that might be the fact that their instinct or whatever is taking over.
Yep.
But he definitely bumps in time. She's gone all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden he's at her house.
Yep.
This happens throughout the book where there's these little timeline inconsistencies, but I don't think it's the writing being poorly put together. I think it's the characters, falling in and out of sanity and consciousness.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I like Chapter 9. Chapter 9 really sets a tone, and it's a good piece of horror writing.
Well, that in Chapter 9 for me was, especially from the perspective of a child, was, oh God, now that child is going to be tainted. Because children, especially in horror writing, are depicted as the innocents, that normally get very tainted, but regardless, in the beginnings they're normally the innocents, and then he's the one that's already starting with the hallucinations, already starting with the marker, and now with the whole finding the Bruja. Okay, so what's gonna go on here on out for Chava and the rest of, if he's the innocent one in this little colony that they have, what's going to happen to the rest of them?
That follows in this vein of storytelling too, because it's like Danny from The Shining or Newt from Aliens.
It sets it up very well as to, the whole, it lures you in as to what's going to happen to the rest of these people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, you want to continue with Chapter 10?
Yep, so in 10, Altman dodges out then, but with the real meat of this chapter is about Hammond trying to walk home while he's having his conniption. And this is where he's then accosted by 3 Dredger Corp operatives.
Tom, Tim, and Terry.
Tom, Tim, and Terry.
Yep.
Which I thought at first were code names.
Nope.
But I don't think so.
Nope.
I think these are just 3 idiots that work for Dredger Corp. They chase him through chixculubs, claiming that Dredger Corp just wants to talk, which is probably actually true.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But you're kind of on Hammond's side. Why would you have these 3 spies essentially walk up to you? And they say that he's wanted for questioning, and they act all thug-like, and that freaks him out. And his paranoia gets triggered here, and he panics and realizes he can't escape. So he tries to slash at Terry, but when that doesn't work, and he does slash Terry's wrist, but he doesn't kill him. He just kind of hurts him, and Terry's taken aback, why would you do that? We just want to talk. He realizes he can't get away, and then Hammond slits his own throat.
Yep.
Kills himself. And Tim and Tom really seem disturbed by this, unsettled, like children almost.
Well, the mindset with Tim and Tom is very Lenny.
Yeah, very childlike, very simple.
Yep, very big,
They're like, why would he do that?
Big guys, big twins, and it's kind of one of those. Terry has to lead them around, like in Mice and Men, as George leads Lenny around. Kind of thing.
There's not a whole lot going on up above the shoulders.
Terry's the brains, they're the brawn.
Okay, what did you guys think of part 1?
I thought part 1 was overall very well written, very engaging. I did not want to put it down.
Yep, sucked me right through it.
Yeah, I agree.
Part 2 is called Confined Spaces, and it opens with another change of perspective. This time we get introduced to Tanner. He is a Dredge Corp manager.
He is a Black Ops specialist.
Yeah, he's really a Dredger Corp manager.
His code name is Eco Sea Line, something like that. He's the head of the semi-secret branch that's been set up in a hurry once they knew about the anomalies.
Your Ecodyne comes from...
Ecodyne?
Ecodyne. Tanner has... this is a quote from the book. Tanner has had a military background specialized in running Black Ops through dummy corporations.
Yep, and that's why I'm pretty sure at this point, this is when I started to think, Dredger Corp isn't just shady, it's a cover-up, because Tanner is the one they send in, and that's what he does.
Yeah, he was running this operation under the name Ecodyne.
Yeah.
Enter the right command into the system at the right moment, and any sign of connection to Dredger Corp would instantly vanish from the company files.
Yep. So he's kind of a hatchet man sent in to deal with this anomaly and figure out what's going on.
Yep.
We get at him talking to a mysterious individual he calls the Colonel, who is an older man of military bearing, but any insignias are being blurred out by the camera. So he's some sort of intelligence operative on the other side and is in some way a consultant who seems to be really in charge of this investigation into the gravitational anomaly. We learned that, in fact, they did have orders to question Hammond, but that they went wrong, and that everybody was a little distressed about that. But they chalk it up to him basically being crazy.
Yep.
And it being an unfortunate incident. The Colonel, whose name we still don't know, charges Tanner to assemble a team to investigate the anomaly more thoroughly. And he also says he's going to send him a private sub.
An experimental sub.
Experimental prototype sub that's not even available to the rest of the intelligence community. It's called a Bathy Scaife.
F7.
Yeah, the F7.
Yes, F7.
So I'm going to call it the sub from here on out. But it's a submersible drill.
You also briefly get mentioned that Lenny Small is the president of Dredger Corp.
But Lenny Small is obviously a cover name. That's not a real person's name. I thought the Colonel was your typical military spook. Well handled. Cold War style. CIA. Yeah.
Yep.
Chapter 12, Tanner chooses Dantec.
Yep.
Yes.
Dantec
Who's
and
an
Hennessy.
ex-military killer, just like him, ex-military Black Ops. And Hennessy, who's a field expert. He kind of digs around to find somebody here who knows how to do a sub, knows his stuff, doesn't seem like he's going to ask too many questions. That's kind of important with Dredger Corp. Don't ask questions.
The other thing about Dantec is he was in the military with Tanner, and it references further on as to what and why. So even though Dantec's not quite with the company...
that's why Tanner chooses him. Tanner trusts him.
Yeah. And the only other important thing to mention in 12 is Tanner has to remind Dantec a couple of times to not kill Hennessy if there is a problem.
Dantec's solution to a problem is kill it.
Which makes him useful for a company like Dredger Corp, but not always useful in confined spaces. And they have to tiptoe around the speculation that the anomaly is alien, because already we're beginning to pick up some very strange things about it. And even Tanner doesn't want to say it until the Colonel does. The Colonel ultimately is the one that says, we suspect it's alien.
Yeah.
You get a little routine montage here. Dantec learns how to make Hennessy replaceable by learning to ride the sub, use the sub. And the most interesting thing is at the end there's a little bit about the moon skirmishes.
Yeah.
At the very end. I thought, that's really cool. I'd like to see that as its own little book.
Yep.
And then I realized Ben Bova already wrote them. So, moving on.
In Chapter 12, the Colonel also orders Tanner and his crew to move the freighter to the middle of the crater.
Yep, the freighter is where they're storing the F7 as a cover.
And drop the F7 by midnight.
Yep.
So they begin to kind of push this. And Evanson does this here and there where he'll push the timeline forward real fast. And this is one of those instances where before Dredger Corp kind of had a presence, but now they've got a real presence. They're investigating. They bring kind of rusted out Hulk around that's floating at the edge of the crater, and now he's got to bring it forward.
Yep, because they were the freighter was at the edge of the crater. Yeah. So that Hennessy and Dantek could do training and learn the sub.
And we're talking about a huge crater here. We're not talking about a little pithy hole in the ground. We're talking about a very, very large crater.
The crater is 110 miles in diameter.
And that's why they can't take the bathyscaphe from the edge. It is too far.
Yep. 55. That would make it 55 miles to the center.
In Chapter 13, Hennessy kind of has a Dead Space nightmare. Oh, I have this at the beginning of 13, but Hennessy has a Dead Space nightmare with monsters and stuff.
This is the beginning of 13.
Okay, and he's then woken up by soldiers who lead him to Dantek, and they take a motorboat out to the ship or submarine, the bathyscaphe, where Hennessy works up the courage to ask Tanner, is this really legal? And Tanner's like, don't ask questions. And Dantek's like, I'll stop him from asking questions. He's like, don't do that, Dantek. Don't kill him. We get a little bit of a back and forth that way. So ultimately, Hennessy makes what is... It's the same kind of decision that Altman makes later on, where Altman calls it Altman's wager. He's going to pretend like he's going along with it.
Yep.
But if anything goes wrong, he's not going to go along with it. And we kind of come back to this idea of not doing the wrong thing, or doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, is a lot of what goes on in this book. With the characters that aren't the Colonel and the Dredger Corps people. A lot of them choose to do the wrong thing for the right reasons, to go along with it, to try and control it.
Yep.
And that's what Hennessy is trying to do when he gets on the sub with Dantek, even though he knows they're technically breaking the law and doing something really shady. Tanner ultimately gives him a choice: either get in the sub and go and stop asking questions, or leave.
Yeah, Hennessy's curiosity gets the better of him, and he gets in the sub.
Yep. So then that forwards the story a little bit, and I liked that here we get a moment where a scientist is given a moral quandary and has an actual moral response. There's a weighing of ethics, and he decides to go with his curiosity.
Yep.
It's not just the Spock, like, going to go with logic or going to go with the law. Like, there's a little bit of weight to this choice that he makes.
Yep.
I like that.
That happens a lot in this book.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Chapter 14, Hennessy and Dantek then descend into the Chixculub crater in the bathyscaphe for the submarine vehicle, the F-7, and almost immediately, Hennessy starts to get nervous, almost hysterical. Dantek is not amused. And when he starts to lose control, Dantek then half chokes him out. Both men are suffering from an increasing headache as they get deeper and deeper, but Dantek is holding it together a lot better, which in my mind was building tension for when he finally snaps and paints the walls with what's left of Hennessy. That doesn't quite happen. So as they get deeper and deeper down into Chixculub, getting closer to the anomaly, Hennessy gets increasingly crazy, starts muttering and hearing to himself, and eventually starts seeing things that Dantek can't see. That's not. He starts to come unhinged and starts to see things moving. And
does he?
Yeah, he starts to come unhinged. He doesn't see anybody yet.
Okay.
But he starts to see things moving out in the water that aren't there.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's also important to remember this is at midnight, so it's pitch black down there.
Yeah.
So he shouldn't be able to see anything moving. It seems that Dantek is going to be fine after a little while. Like, Dantek has finally gotten over whatever the craziness is. Until he mutters something super creepy about the floor of the Chixculub crater looks like the end of the world.
Yeah.
Is that all you have for 14?
I really like the way that they do the rapid descent into madness. He doesn't just fly off the handle. Like, you get to see Hennessy going through the many stages of, like, increasingly unhinged and coming apart at the seams. And I liked the back and forth tension of who's finally going to snap. Yep.
In this chapter, Hennessy starts to hear voices from his dream. Mm-hmm. That he had at the beginning of chapter 13. And they got louder and louder the closer they got to the ocean floor. As soon as Hennessy and Dantek got to the ocean floor, both of them experience a sudden burst of pain in their head, but only for a moment.
Mm-hmm. And that happens throughout the book as they interface with the marker in various ways.
Yep.
So, chapter 15, it's obvious that Hennessy is not going to be able to handle it and just do his job. So, Dantek takes over the drill. And he brutally removes Hennessy.
Yes.
He picks him up and throws him out of the
nearly
chair.
kills him, almost breaks his arm moving him. Which, of course, because Hennessy becomes childlike, which happens to almost everybody who starts to come unhinged in the book, they become very childlike. It's difficult to read because you're like, why is he doing that? But you also get to see that Dantec is still very much in control of himself and acting in character, which is brutal and to the point. After a little while, though, as Dantec's working, it seems like he's the crazy one. Like, it's coming and going in spots. And then you realize that Hennessy is absolutely crazy because he starts hearing a voice in his head and also screaming.
Yeah.
Hennessy is out of his mind at this point. And then all of a sudden he sees his dead brother outside the sub. And they start a happy little conversation. Hi, Shane.
Hi.
And he's like, aren't you cold out there? No, fine.
Yeah, it's also about 50 meters from the marker.
Yeah, they've gotten quite close.
And
then there's another power surge, and the ghost is inside with him.
It's important to note here that Hennessy knows that Shane died in a car accident years before.
And yet he continues to behave and believe that way, which leads to the subjective rationalization of hallucinations. And that's a common thing that you deal with when somebody's out of their mind.
Yep. Hennessy saw his brother's dead body.
Yes.
Shane's head almost completely detached.
Yep.
Shane tells Hennessy that during this conversation, Hennessy tells Shane, "But you're dead. I know you're dead." And Shane replies with, "That is what they want him to think."
I have written in my notes here. I have it written right there.
It's also important to note that Shane needs to be invited into the ship.
Yes, I thought that too. Very vampiric almost.
Yes.
Yep, had invited him in, and then as soon as Shane was inside the ship miraculously came back alive, and the oxygen recirculator magically started working again.
Yep. And this is where chapter 16 picks up. Dantec is not aware of the family reunion going on behind him, and he's just grateful that the ship is working. He gets back to work, and but Hennessy continues to act kind of weird behind him. And then all of a sudden, their watches stop.
Yes.
As they get closer and closer, their chronometers.
Yes, the chronometers. Hennessy, the way I have it written in my notes is Hennessy notices the clock is no longer working. Shane tells him not to worry about it. Hennessy asks Dantec what time it was, and that's when Dantec realizes that his watch has stopped as well.
Yep.
So Dantec doesn't realize it until Hennessy points it out.
This is also it's not the first time that we see ghosts like this, but this is the first time that the message of the ghost is very clear. Don't mess with the black marker.
Yep.
The marker gets introduced by name as the black marker here, but it's also important to note that the very first ghost that Hennessy deals with is telling him to stay away as he gets closer.
Yep.
So we've now encountered two anti-marker forces. I think it is the marker. It doesn't know if it wants people to be near or if it's confused or what, but Bruja said stay away and destroy anything that comes out of it, and so does Shane.
At this point, it's it seems like it's the marker not knowing what it wants to do.
Yeah.
But we'll find out later in the book what's actually going on.
And Dantec thinks that the marker is marvelous.
Yeah, we get our first sight of the marker in this chapter.
Yep.
We hadn't seen it yet. We'd heard it described and also scrawled in the sand, but this is the first time that we see it. It's creepy, it's alien, it's covered in nightmarish glyphs, and all of a sudden Shane says that Dantec is becoming one of them.
Yep.
Because he is completely enamored with it.
Shane also states, right after stating that Dantec is becoming one of them, Shane also says that they have to, quote, get rid of him.
And so it begins. We get a little perspective switch here. This is the first time we've seen anything in chapter 17 through Dantec's eyes.
Yes.
We know about him because of Tanner, we know about him because of Hennessy, but we hadn't yet experienced anything through his head. We learn in this chapter that the reason that Dantec and Tanner are related is that because Dantec survived the moon skirmishes by killing anybody who threatened him, and also anybody who had spare oxygen when he needed it.
Yep.
And we also learned that, unlike Hennessy, who's too distracted, that the object, the marker, that he doesn't know it's the marker yet, but the object is of immense value, and it's clearly alien.
Yep.
And so he proceeds to cut into the object.
Yep.
Which, as soon as they start cutting into it, They both get an instant pain in their heads.
That's
Yep.
chapter 18.
Yep, moving right into chapter 18.
I
hold on,
have it
I've
down
got-
under
it's
17.
an 18 on mine.
Is it?
Yeah, it's an 18
Okay.
on mine
But
too.
it moves right into the next step. He decides to cut into it, and then, like Jen said, there's a piercing noise that like jerks into both their heads.
I've got a mention for chapter
okay.
17 before we move on. The only reason that Dantec, during the moon skirmishes, that Dantec kept Tanner alive was because they found a functional transmitter
Yeah.
and called for a dropship. That was it.
Yep.
That was the only reason he was still alive.
And so, like most serial killers, he's attached a special significance to Tanner because he happened to survive with him.
But it's important to note that Dantec still turned down Tanner's oxygen to conserve Tanner's oxygen.
Yep.
Just in case the dropship didn't get there.
Yep. Yeah, he's a cold-blooded killer.
Yes.
So then we get the piercing noise as he cuts into it, like Jen said, from the marker when Dantec attempts to cut into it, and it hurts both men.
Yes. And Shane explodes.
Shane explodes in a pile of blood.
Yep.
And Hennessy freaks out.
Yep.
This is right as Shane is beginning to warn that they should be resisting convergence, but then he explodes. In chapter 9, I have very short notes for 18. It's a short chapter. So Shane explodes, and then Hennessy starts screaming, and chapter 19 begins with Dantec turning around to a crazy comment. Actually, this must be the time slip then, because my notes for 17, 18, 19 are slightly overlapping in time.
Ah.
That would explain your notes overlapping too.
Shane tells Hennessy that the marker should be left alone, and if they keep messing with it, that the convergence will happen.
First mention of convergence that I remember.
And Hennessy doesn't want that to happen.
Yep. And then that's when Dantec turns, at least in Dantec's subjective timeline, and accidentally blows up Shane.
Yes, a second time.
And he inadvertently bursts the ghost, splashing gore all over in Hennessy's hallucination. Hennessy tries to get Dantec to stop the drill and core sampler so that he can save his brother by scooping him back together. Dantec agrees to stop, but he ultimately is lying about his agreement. And then Hennessy proceeds to beat him to death.
Yep.
In a brutal murder scene using a
bar.
strut or a pipe from the oxygen recirculator, right?
Yep.
And in his final moment, Dantec is filled with the faces of everyone he killed on the moon coming forward to suck the breath out of him.
Yep.
And what I thought was a really horrific chapter.
It was brutal, and I was kind of surprised that it was Hennessy that cracked and killed the
Yep.
brute of a man that
Yep.
Dantec is.
That was what I was just going to
Well,
ask.
it's because Hennessy kind of surprised him with the pipe, and the first hit kind of knocked Dantec for a loop, and
Yep.
Dantec just couldn't recover.
I was just going to ask that question if you were surprised it ended up being Hennessy. I was surprised. Yeah.
I was
Because-
surprised. That I will admit I was surprised about, that Hennessy was able to kill Dantec. I knew Hennessy was going to snap, but I figured Dantec would just kill him.
Yeah.
I didn't expect Hennessy to actually be able to kill Dantec.
Kind of in the way that, like, Cracks and Field get into a fight later on in the book. And it ends up being that the brute is the one that goes out of control and hurts everybody. That's what I thought. But doesn't turn out that way. And
then it gets worse.
And then in chapter 20, in the post-murder days, Hennessy comes back to himself, and Shane the Ghost also reappears. Completely fine, by the way. He wasn't at all hurt by being burst like a blood bag. And he begins to warn Hennessy about the convergence again and tells him to warn everybody.
Yep.
And his message is pretty clear. Convergence is bad, the marker should be left alone, and then he fades.
Yep.
Leaving Hennessy pretty confused.
Yep. Tanner does try to contact the F7, but is lost in static. Hennessy yells that he has lost Shane. Shane then, Shane reappears after this, like what you were saying, and telling him that the marker is the past, and that he should let it go and not succumb to the whispers now that the marker is awake. Shane also tells him that convergence is bad and to tell everyone.
Yep.
Touches Hennessy on the forehead,
Yes.
and his touch burns.
Yep.
And then
this happens throughout the book.
yes,
It
does
kind of burns information into him. It definitely happens with Altman be praised. And it happens with another character too when they get touched by the knowledge.
Oh yes, that's right.
And
That's
so
right.
it begins with chapter 1, where Shane is finally gone. Hennessy, having been touched, is like a little boy at first. And then the marker begins to press against that vulnerability, and suddenly he's filled with the need to write down and record everything. that's coming through his head, but he has nothing to write with, which is quite a conundrum. So he looks around, looks all over the place, looks up and low and on the walls and probably down at his own shoes until he finally sees Dantek's bleeding corpse. And as humans do, he sees a tool when he needs a tool. And he begins to scrawl these bizarre alien symbols all over the interior of the sub with bloody ink. Out of his mind, not even really like conscious of the fact that he's doing it, just feverishly writing. And every time he runs out of ink, he goes and beats the crap out of the corpse again in order to get it to ooze out more blood. And when he finally runs out of space, having written on every available surface, he looks all over again. Because he's in a conundrum, he's run out of paper. Until he looks down at himself and his own happy white little body. And so he strips off all his clothes and then continues to write all over himself and his own naked body, eventually having to cut open his own arm and use that as ink. And then as this feverish writing passes, this frenzy passes of recording, he then realizes he needs to warn everybody the way that Shane told him. It's almost like Shane told him to do something and the marker interfered. And so he tries to broadcast a message, but in the middle of it kind of loses track of what he's saying. And so his message becomes, convergence is really bad. We should definitely stay away from the marker. Or should we? Maybe we should go investigate the marker. Guys, maybe we should play with the marker. Never mind. Come down here and help me find out all about the marker.
Yep.
And in the middle of it, yeah, protect it.
And that convergence is ultimately a good thing.
Yep. And so at the end of his message, it goes from being a plea for it goes from being a warning to being a plea for understanding of the marker. And so there he is. It's actually the cover art of the book is Hennessy in the sub, covered in scrawl, and everything else is too. And having the madness finally pass over him, just like everybody else in his final moments, he realizes he broke the oxygen recirculator when he killed Dantek, and that he's been using the oxygen like crazy. And so he comes back to himself, and he's lucid, free of the compulsion, and then he suffocates to death, aware of his own psychotic break and self-destruction.
Yep. Curls up on the floor and dies.
Yep. And that's a driving theme with dealing with the markers. It finally lets go of you, and you come back to yourself in your own final moments. And this got me thinking, what is the opposing force to the marker? Because we know that part of the marker definitely wants to be replicated and to mess with people. And I started to wonder if that isn't, the marker itself, the way it's built, isn't a symbol for two different opposing forces always being intertwined, right?
Maybe.
I didn't know enough about it. I did not cheat and go to the wiki for this. I wanted to rely on the book and the game.
Nope, neither did I.
So I started to note the presence of this anti-marker force. And I started to wonder, too, because the marker itself seems to, when it decides to act, it'll just drive you mad. But then anytime there's the anti-marker force, it's always speaking through the dead, through the past. So I thought that was interesting. I really like this chapter.
Yeah, I did too.
And I really like this part of the book, because that actually concludes part 2.
Yep. My thoughts on part 2 were very well written. Atmosphere of the scenes was very well described and sucks you right into the story, completely immersing you. And it's written in such a way that it mirrors the atmosphere of the game very well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Confined.
These couple chapters, I think, merge the horror genre very well. In the fact that not only did he go completely insane, he then proceeded to kill Dantek. And then he proceeded to brutally stomp it into a pile of nothing.
Goo.
And then he proceeded to place said body pieces back into his chair.
Yeah, that was really disturbing.
Yeah, that was.
And then after that, then he proceeded to be like, oh crap, I just did all this stuff, now I'm gonna die, and then curl up in the floor. Like...
Yeah.
There's a helplessness to it.
Yeah, the only reason that he placed Dantek's pieces back in the chair
is he wanted the space.
He needed more space to write.
Yeah. And horror tends to work well with humor, and that's definitely kind of a funny moment just because it's like that god-awful, like, ugh.
What are you doing? Why?
And it shows up later on, too.
Yeah.
Because that's how they know there's a murder committed in the sub. Dantek and all of his pieces are looking out through a video.
Well, that, and they also see Hennessy and his crazed, naked, bloody body.
Yeah.
Which
kneeling in its own glory.
Yep.
Yeah, which is also the TV broadcast.
So in part 3, which is called The Noose Titans, we immediately start with the Colonel and Tanner discussing the uncertainty about what the heck went down. And this is where we know what happened to Dantek's body, really, because it's broadcast in the video.
Sort of.
It's sort of over on the edge of the screen. Yeah, this pile of body parts that does not add up to a human being anymore.
Well, no, this is before they stitch all the information together.
They get that one part.
Yep.
They know something horrible has gone wrong. They don't know what, but they don't have the whole video like Kyle says. They've got bits and pieces because so deep down the whole transmission did not manage to escape. The Colonel points out that the timing may have something to do with the marker's activity. Maybe.
Possibly. Maybe.
That's all I got in this chapter.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot.
So in chapter 23, we flip back to Altman. Altman be praised, and Altman be praised notes the marker's signal has increased in activity since this went down, although he doesn't know the specifics. He doesn't even know that Hammond is dead, the phone guy, to go way back to him. So he's just kind of continuing apace doing his own investigation. He confirms with Showalter, Ramirez, and Scud, 3 other scientist buddies, that the signal has in fact increased in their areas as well. And together they put the data together and theorize that there must have been someone drilling in the center.
Scud says maybe there's someone drilling.
Yeah, the data is not conclusive.
It's not conclusive. I have it pinpointed to within 50 meters of the center of the crater.
Yep.
And because it's not directly at the center of the crater, Scud won't say one way or the other.
Also, Ramirez noticed the freighter, hired Captain Jesus.
Yep.
That wasn't Ramirez, it was Showalter.
Well, was it Showalter goes out there? I have one of them.
I'm almost positive it's Showalter.
Well, anyway, one of the scientists goes out there and he hires a fisherman, right, to take him out there.
Captain Jesus!
Captain Jesus. And Captain Jesus is like, no, bro, because they realize there's military guys on there and they get driven away.
They briefly noticed the F7 and then got told to move along.
No, they noticed a crane for the F7.
Yeah, the sub crane, the cradle.
Yep.
Which shouldn't be on a rusted out old frigate. They don't need some brand new piece of technology.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then they're basically driven away, which leaves them all kind of unsettled, but Altman is determined to continue. In chapter 24, we go back to the Colonel and Tanner. They view part of Hennessy's crazy video, and the Colonel decides that it's too late to contain by murdering everybody who knows about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he tasks Tanner with finding out how many people have seen the video. And we get to hear the Colonel's annoying "everyone is expendable" threat, which happens many, many times. So Colonel's kind of campy the way he's written here. I also thought it was smart that he did not try to enforce the Streisand effect of the internet, where you attempt to suppress something once it's leaked, because that just makes sure everybody sees it. Straightforward chapter.
Yep.
Here's their next step. We know what the scientist's next step was.
Yeah.
So in 25, we go back to Altman, and Altman gets another weird call, because he needs to have a more private phone number, at 1 a.m. asking if he knows anything about the pulse signal. When the other line, what he basically says, like, are you talking about the anomaly, and tries to make connections, and even tries to work with the other person on the phone, but that person hangs up on him, and Ada gets very upset about, how people are being shady.
Yep.
He realizes that something much larger is going on than what he and his scientist buddies thought. And so he gets on his little forum and reports it to his buddies. And
his buddies say the same thing.
Yeah, they all got the same phone, the same phone thing. And he puts it together that the timing says that whoever it was just calling down an alphabetical list of scientists. In the morning, then Altman learns the others have had the same call. He does the alphabetical analysis there, and he also discovers that every scientist in the region seems to have gotten a call. So instead of backing off, though, when somebody has all of their information, he decides to go ahead and solve the mystery, which is a little aggravating because he's clearly putting himself in danger, and his girlfriend is not happy about this. So one of the scientists that Altman talks to actually gives him a video.
Sigmund Bennett,
this other scientist who's recovered this part of the video thinks that the phone calls were in relation to this weird video that he got coming from roughly the crater, and doesn't think anything of it because there's not a whole lot of information to it, but he sends it over to Altman anyway, which Altman sees it and then decides to go public with this information. And he goes into town and uses a public terminal to leak the video under some title
alias.
Yeah, it was under an alias. It was something like Dredger Corp Misdeeds in Chixculubs or something like that, just to get people's attention.
Dredger Corp illegally digging.
Yep, and just to see what happens. His girlfriend is, of course, horrified by this decision, too, and then reveals that, in fact, the insomnia and headaches that Altman and Co. have been having appear to be universal to all the inhabitants of Chixculub, not just the people who are working there, but the natives as well. And what's more, the natives' behavior has continued to get even stranger. And that she tells him again that Chixculub means devil's tail. And we also get the little Yucatec myth on page 111, in my book anyway. So what she says, it was told to her by the drunk, not to us. But she says the only one I can get to talk about it in any detail is the town drunk. And he talks about it only if I ply him with booze. He claims that there are stories that have been passed down from generation to generation about a huge forked object thrust deep into the middle of the ocean. This, he told me in a mix of Spanish and Yucatec Maya, is all that remains of a great devil who surrendered his dominion upon the earth to dig down into the depths and rule over hell. His tail got caught and is still there, perhaps still alive. Some believe that this devil may still be attached to it. If you touch the tail, they say, you make yourself known to the devil. If the devil knows you, he'll try to claim you. If you destroy more than you create, you make yourself known to the devil. You and your people, the drunk told me when he was deep in his cups, you are known to the devil. And then he made that strange symbol at me, a kind of curse, twisting his index and middle fingers together. So we have this creepy myth about the object, and it describes very accurately the shape of the marker, which is kind of strange considering it's, like half a mile underwater in a crater, buried deep in the earth.
More than that.
So it's just a little strange, and it continues to support the idea that in some way the natives have been trained or exposed to the marker's presence, and that they know a lot more about it than anybody else realizes. I really like that they stopped, or that B.K. Evanson stopped here in this chapter, and he kind of unpacks all of the different facets of this mystery. Because there's a lot going on, and there's a lot between Tanner and the Colonel, and there's been a couple times where the story and the plots have advanced rapidly. But he stops here, and he just kind of, item by item, unpacks everything for us to look at again, to kind of entice us.
Yep.
And it also starts your brain with the intertwining of the pieces.
Yeah. And starting to look for patterns.
Yeah, so everything starts to
come together.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does that periodically. Occasionally it's a little too frequently and it gets annoying, but here in the beginning, once so much information has been dispersed to the reader, it's kind of the opposite of exposition. It's almost like a point of analysis rather than info dumping. So in chapter 26, Tanner and the Colonel then concoct a PR response to Altman's leak. And we start to see the way that some of the chapters are tied together real tight here.
Yep.
This is one of the tightest ties, I think, and it works really well. The Colonel decides that they're going to admit that, yes, they were drilling to test a new sub, but something went terribly wrong. And, of course, now Dredger Corp is going to ask the military for help to retrieve their prototype. And that gives the Colonel official control over this.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's a short chapter, but it's a good little section of conniving.
The Colonel also says again that, especially now, way too many people have seen it.
Yeah.
Seen the video to really go plan a mass murdering genocide.
In chapter 27, two detectives show up to question Altman about Hammond's death.
Ramos and Gallo.
Ramos and Gallo, yep. There's some pretty good, tense, witty police banter here as they toy with Altman, but ultimately they leave him alone. This is also the chapter where Altman finds out that Hammond's dead, and he's pretty rattled by this.
Yeah.
Field then asks him if he's seen the Dredger Corp press release, and it's another really tight tie to the previous chapter. It's occasionally very difficult to show things happening simultaneously in books. That requires a deft hand, and it's really well done in this area. Altman is not at all convinced by Dredger Corp's mea culpa, and he decides to carry on with his investigation anyway. And then that night, Ada is late coming home from work, and this freaks Altman out, but she was late because she met Chava, the boy from earlier in the book. We haven't heard from him in a long time. And Chava then proceeds to tell Altman, in exchange for food that is not onions, his strange story about the not dead, but still pretty dead, Bruja, and the thing on the beach. Further, he even offers for a little more food to take Altman to the beach, and I like this little funny retelling. I thought that Chava's way of delineating information was very childlike.
It shows his childlike innocence.
Yeah.
Very well.
I mean, it also just shows how much in poverty they live.
I thought it was funny because it was in exchange for a cucumber, specifically, and 3 other things, and that Altman would give Chava messages to deliver whenever he sees him.
Lots of work, too.
Yep.
It's just a good show that humor and horror go really well together.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a good little breakup moment because there's been a lot of tensity. Jumping forward in chapter 28, Tanner then gets a mysterious call, which I thought maybe was a journalist, when he's trying to sleep. So he turns his phone off because he's struggling, as bad as it already is, with the moral implications of what he's doing and how he lied. And he's self-medicating with sleeping pills and booze. It's very clear from the way that the introspective inner narration after the phone call that he's really upset about lying and he's really uncomfortable with what the colonel's asking him to do, and with not knowing what the heck happened to Dantec and Hennessy. He's bothered by that, and especially what they do know. But he's also really aggravated that people won't leave him alone, so he turns the phone off, and we get kind of a horror trope here where the unplugged phone rings. And this time, Dantec is on the other line. Now, the last time we saw Dantec was a pile of dissociated limbs. So this is not actually Dantec. Tanner doesn't know. Well, I guess he kind of knows that, right?
Yeah.
We get a brief little haunted phone game, and then the ghost of Dantec shows up himself, sitting on the bed. And Tanner resists the hallucination itself only briefly until he breaks down, and then Dantec asks him to share his oxygen tank with him. And you see that kind of childlike dissociation again, where Tanner begins to think that he's back on the moon, and that in order to stay alive, Dantec's going to need some air. And so, because he's a good guy, he agrees to use a knife to open his breathing tube, and then without realizing it, Tanner slits his own throat. And just as with all the others, his final panic moments are lucid as he tries to save himself. And holy Marker is insidious.
Yeah. This chapter, I thought the end of this where Tanner ultimately kills himself was very well written, because at the end of the chapter it doesn't mention that Tanner has killed himself.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mention that he slit his own throat. It mentions that Tanner's hands are wet and sticky.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
And it kind of gives you the notion that sounds like blood, but you're not 100% sure.
And it also doesn't actually ever I don't think it actually specifically says that he slit his own throat. It says that he cut his oxygen tube.
Yep.
While he was on the bed, and then at the end it says Tanner drowns because he cut his oxygen line that he really didn't have on in his bedroom.
Yeah.
Which would have been his trachea.
In chapter 29, we flip back to Chava and Altman and Ada, who are going to visit the body on the beach. This is from way back in the first few chapters of the book.
Yep.
The twisted, gnarled bones. And Chava attempts to explain the Bruja's magic, but the adults just don't really understand. They do find the deformed bones, and they're incredibly unnerved no matter what idea they can come up with. This leads to an argument in which Altman comes across as a little bit unhinged, as if he's already being pushed to investigate by the marker. They walk and talk, and, well, actually, I want to stop real quickly. They also get Chava to demonstrate the pose that the body was in. And I happened to read this about the same time that I was in the hydroponics lab. So I realized that the description where he's kneeling is very similar to the breathers in the games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also very much like The Thing.
Yes.
So I like that a lot. I like these little tiebacks. The breathers in the game do not have the same level of air sacs as the one in the book, where the thing on its back was as big as a house, to quote the book.
Yeah.
But that's a kind of a limitation technically of the game.
Also, it could also be the exaggeration of a child.
Could also be.
Yeah.
Yeah. They do say how big, and everything they think of is too small.
Huge.
So after this, they walk him back to the edge of his village, and then Ada and Altman end up in a bar where they encounter the nameless drunk who's been on the fringe of Chava's story this whole time and also provided some information to Ada. They furnish it. Well, actually, he steals one of Altman's beers.
Yeah.
But then they also give him more beer. And then he exposition dumps about the strangeness of the Chixculub natives and how every few hundred years a monster will wash up on the shore, and yet somehow they always remember the rituals and the language needed to cleanse it. suggesting that the opposing force itself is in some way tied to the marker. And he also recognizes that the man, he's the only one apparently who recognizes that whatever that thing was on the beach isn't just some monster that came from the sea, but is actually one of the humans who had been alive very recently, because he recognizes the tattoo on its arm.
Yes.
Yep, it was a
Which is pretty
sailor.
creepy. And then finally, Altman learns of Tanner's death when they get home, and he's further unnerved and guilty about putting himself and Ada in danger, but despite that guilt, doesn't change anything. So, chapter 30, this is the estimable Lenny Smalls chapter. He's the president of Dredger Corp, and he gets woken up by the colonel, whose name we learn is Craig Markoff, who informs him that Tanner is dead. They agree to proceed as planned with the excavation, and it's very clear that Markoff is really in control. He just needs Small to sign off on this. They also say that the marker pulse has stopped when Tanner died, further tying the marker activity to the suicidal inclinations of the people in Chixculub. That's all I have here on 31.
The only other thing I noted kind of shows like the shadiness of Dredger Corp. Markoff is having a station to retrieve the F7 brought in and then extract the marker, and Markoff and Lenny Smalls are supposed to split the profits 50-50.
Okay, so he's lying to Smalls about profit, right? It's pretty clear that Markoff just wants to take over the world.
Yeah.
And he's a giant D-bag about it.
Yeah, he is.
But well, Markov also makes the comment: we won't have to worry about profits when we rule the world, or when we're the two most powerful men, or something like that.
What are we doing tonight, Pinky? Something we do every night. We're gonna take over the world.
So in chapter 31, we go back to Altman, Showalter, and Ramirez and Scud, who meet in a bar, probably the same bar. I don't think Chixculub is that big, to discuss the cessation of the signal pulse. They agree to keep investigating, though, and even more, to file an injunction to stop Dredger Corp from getting like sole proprietorship of whatever they recover, and to try to get a publicly funded organization or university to begin drilling, because it should be public. I kind of like the different flavors of scientist here. Scud is very reserved, refuses to agree to anything, but he is the first to step in and do scientific duty when Altman asks them to take the next step. Showalter and Ramirez have different perspectives, and it's just good characterization through the dialogue.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's a strength in the book. So that's the end of part 3.
Yep, that ends part 3.
Thoughts?
My thoughts are still well written and engaging. Pace begins to pick up as it builds towards the climax.
Yep.
Yeah, the only other thing I thought about it was part 3 had a lot going on, but it was very well handled and very well written and spaced out, so that way you didn't feel like you were either A, getting overwhelmed, or B, you were getting a whole lot at once and then nothing in the next chapter. It was very well spaced out.
Yeah, it was a busybody chapter, but effectively. So part 4 is called The Descent. And in this one, we start with Altman having a horrific Dead Space dream. He wakes up to find that Markoff is in his house, and that Ada is missing, and that Tim, Tom, and Terry are also with him. These are the lugs that were working for Tanner and Dredger Corp. They were also the ones that were there when Hammond decided to kill himself. Markoff is angry that Altman was getting in his way, and Altman realizes that this confirms his suspicion that the military and Dredger Corp are working together in more than the officially discussed capacity. We, of course, already know this, but Altman's revelation sort of falls flat because, duh. We just had 3 chapters on that. It's short, it's straightforward, and there's a quick little interrogation that follows, laying out the pieces of the mystery again, and I thought this was a little bit too much to see all the pieces again, and they conclude that the marker is likely extraterrestrial in origin. Markoff then threatens him for knowing too much and being expendable, but of course the threat is empty, even though he points an unloaded gun at his head and fires. Pulls trigger anyway. It's just Markoff screwing around with Altman before abducting him and Ada as leverage, because she's a damsel in distress. I don't know. Short, straightforward. I liked it for that. The one issue I have with this chapter is an issue that I know Kyle's going to roll his eyes at. And I think that Altman's conclusion that this thing must come from a different galaxy is just kind of stupid. Why from a different galaxy? I just don't get that.
I thought that was a little strange too.
Now, I spent a little bit of time thinking about this and thinking about the various horror movies that I know, and I'm pretty sure it's a reference to The Thing, Because I think at the beginning it says that whatever that thing is that landed came from a different galaxy. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that calling it from outside the galaxy is a reference to the thing.
Okay.
And in that case, I'll forgive it, even though I think it's stupid.
Yeah, even I kind of rolled my eyes at that one and was like, why has it got to be another galaxy?
I think it's because it's a reference to the thing. I'm not sure. I was super tempted to go back and watch the movie, but I thought my wife would kill me if I made her watch it again.
That's your once-a-year movie, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple of those. That one's every year, though.
The only other thing for Chapter 32 was that the crater is now a classified military matter. And Markov pulled out the proposal from the pool, so that way it would never get approved for.
Yeah. Showing how deep his control runs.
Yep.
That brings us to Chapter 33. And I can see on Kyle's face that he's upset about this one, and I am too. It is long, it is winding, and it is ultimately jumbled. And it should be several chapters. Terry and Tim oversee Altman packing. They admit to being spooked when Hammond killed himself in front of them. Then they drag him to a Dredger Corp or a compound, which is little more than a prison, where he meets Ada and the other scientists while boarding a helicopter. This takes them to a mysterious, misty cloud in the middle of the ocean. The misty fog fades, revealing an enormous floating facility made of struts and glass domes. Altman, Ada, and friends are escorted through the military-run research facility, which sounds an awful lot like the Ishimura.
Yeah.
There's just boxes and barrels and stuff all over the place. And down to the bottom of it, where Markov is waiting like a supervillain in a rotating chair. And that's where the chapter should have ended.
Yeah.
But we live in the darkest timeline now, so it continues. Then there's a few more pages of exposition that doesn't really amount to anything, and Altman becomes more familiar with the facility, and they creep back towards Chixculub. I don't know why Markov didn't just stick him in prison until the thing got there. But whatever. What do I know? Due to the high alert among the guards, Altman and Ada begin to think that Markov sees the object as a weapon, which, as we know from his conversation with Lenny Smalls, is pretty close to the truth. Mm-hmm. Altman also notices that he's being watched and decides to push on anyway. Again. With his digging, and he promises Ada to be careful again. Even though every time he promises, he then ups the ante and makes the situation worse. And if I was Markov, I'd definitely be telling him. The dude's weird and wanders all over the place.
Yeah.
Finally, at the end of the chapter, which I really think should have been 3 chapters, Altman falls in with a submarine pilot.
Hendricks.
Jason Hendricks.
I was just pausing because I just don't get the logic here. Again, Markov brings him to the facility, and he doesn't have a role or a job, but he's got a virtually free run-of-the-mill to use resources and bother people. But yeah, so he meets Hendricks, another submarine pilot whose name starts with H, and learns to pilot with very little effort because he's the chosen one. Markov, when asked for no apparent reason, adds Altman to the submarine piloting team.
As a backup.
For
Mosby.
Which I thought was...
Edgar Mosby.
I thought that was ridiculously convenient.
Okay, I'm glad you have an issue with it. Would you take a look at the very end of my notes for right there? How is it written?
It's written in capital letters.
Okay. Why is Altman allowed to be why is he allowed to be a sub pilot after only a few days in the sub? That angered me so much.
Yep, this chapter is guilty of the idiot clause. You don't need to make a stupid decision. You could have done something smarter, like earlier in the book said, oh, he is working in Chixculub because he uses a submarine to study mineral. And just given a little drop at the beginning.
Yep.
Anything.
There is no reason, with as strict as Markov was with the security in that place, that Altman should have even been allowed in the sub bay to begin with.
We could have avoided this entire issue if he'd come to follow Ada because it combined his 2 favorite things in the world. Personal submarine usage and girlfriend. It would have been easy, right? It was perfect for him. But instead, we get a little montage that's just, I don't know,
it dragged on.
It's too many chapters.
All right, let's continue before we turn this into Andromeda.
I like the facility. I think it's a cool idea.
Yes, I agree.
A floating city.
Yep.
It's kind of in line with the Ishimura and the other constructs, the ring that you'll end up on when you play Dead Space 2, the orbital ring. Just the big facilities like that this game series likes and enjoys thrusting people into. I thought it's cool. I would visit.
That's what I...
Well, and it's also nifty that it's portable. It takes forever to move it.
Slow.
They're like 3 weeks away from the center of the crater, but regardless.
Yeah, they're towing it with subs.
Yep.
Regardless,
5 of them, right?
There's
portable.
there's a few of them, yeah.
And it's got the misty jets too. It's like a kind of cloak. All right, whatever.
I got a supervillain feel from that too.
Definitely got like a Moonraker. Yeah, ridiculous. But okay, so in chapter 34, Altman gets awakened, and I noticed that he relies on Altman crashing to consciousness as a chapter beginner for a lot of these chapters in the second half of the book. But Altman is awakened to discover that Hendricks is pounding at his door. Mosby is super drunk, and he is needed for an unexpected deep-water test because Markov likes to demand that of people, last-minute expeditions. Altman agrees to help clean up Mosby, but he says, I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for you, Hendricks, because they're best of friends now.
There's some man love going on there.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, Ada's kind of cold because she doesn't want to be there, and she's upset with him. Incredibly, Altman does manage to get Mosby cleaned up and gets him brought down to the deck for inspection. But then he has to run off to go find Hendricks and Markov for some reason that I didn't totally follow.
No, just Hendricks.
Just Hendricks.
Just Hendricks.
Wouldn't Hendricks have shown up eventually?
Yeah.
In any case, he leaves Mosby there. Mosby then finds a stashed bottle of booze and manages to break his own neck when he falls off a lift.
Yep.
I read that meant that Markov had him killed to put Altman on the sub. That was my interpretation of the scene. That is awful convenient.
Yeah, I thought it was awful convenient, but I just attributed it to slightly lazy writing after chapter 33.
It could be. I mean, but then if we combine the fact that Mosby dies conveniently with the fact that Markov agrees conveniently, maybe this was part of some grand plan.
Maybe.
I would think the grand plan is stupid, but the two pieces fit together. It wouldn't be stupid if it had just gone back and he had had experience working in submarines.
Yep.
That would have solved the entire problem. But anyway, we know that these books tend to be written by committees, so it might have been on the draft and then got cut out. Who knows? So Altman and Hendricks then go for a submarine ride in the moonlight. It's very romantic. And they are pretty chill. He likes it. It's calm.
Yep.
My notes say, wait, what? No emotional reaction to Mosby falling and breaking his neck?
None whatsoever by anyone.
No.
Nope.
Not even Altman.
I think even Markov goes, well, that's done. There's some little comment by him like, moving on.
Well, the only emotion about Mosby's death is by Altman, who feels guilty because it feels like it's his fault.
Yeah, but barely, and he forgets 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
It's not even an emotional reaction. It's just like an instinct, like a reflex.
Yeah. I feel guilty because this might be my fault because I left him alone.
I guess Markov sets the example, and he was like, who cares?
Yeah, but that guy, Moresby, was also a severe drunk in his late 60s.
Yeah, but he was also the heir of a great nautical heritage. I don't know if you know Sir Edward Mosby, the captain of some wooden ship at some point.
Yep.
I did like that everybody else made fun of him for that.
Yeah, I did too.
Do you know who he is? No. Okay. So in chapter 35, then, the floating compound finally drifts into Chixculub as the pulse signal starts up again. But this time it's patchy and irregular. We also learn that Markov has robots, MROVs, beginning excavation down at the bottom of the crater. That wouldn't go wrong. Leave robots to deal with the horror object. No way is that going to go wrong. The bad dreams start up again, and the chief psychologist, Dr. Stevens, comes to give Altman and also Hendricks a clean bill of health because they're concerned about a repeat outbreak of Hennessy fever.
Yep.
And Altman gives Hendricks the go-ahead.
Yep. Ultimately, yeah. Hendricks goes a little nuts in the sub.
Hendricks is about to go a lot of nuts. So in chapter 36 then, and Jenn, if you have anything to say, just jump in.
Nah, you're covering most of it.
All right, so Altman and Hendricks begin the dive. Hendricks immediately starts to lose his marbles and starts acting like a frightened baby. Altman begins to experiment and discovers that the robots aren't receiving commands from the headquarters because they're too far down, which is kind of an issue that a lot of the technology has in the crater. Might not just be the water. Who knows? Then all of a sudden, Hendrix starts complaining of a headache and starts gibbering to his dead father.
Altman briefly focuses Hendrix by making him do, like, writing the readings and stuff down.
Yeah, and much like a child, he's like, okay, I can do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, just like with Dantec and Hennessy, no, he can't. It's not going to keep him focused because he's beginning to drink all the marbles.
One thing that I want to note is the beginning of it, like right after they start to dive, Hendrix is crying.
Yes.
He doesn't notice.
He doesn't want to die.
And yeah, when he's gibbering to his father, Altman starts to argue with him, saying that it isn't possible.
Yeah.
Hendrix replies with, "It's okay. He explained it. He is dead, and the pressure won't hurt him."
And that's, again, that subjective continuity,
Yeah.
Of a hallucination. But yeah, Altman is deeply unnerved by this, tries to argue with him, and continues to do his dive and to do his work. And all of a sudden, as he lies about trying to resurface, Hendrix freaks out. And a little bit of distraction then allows Altman to bludgeon Hendrix with a shoe.
With a shoe, I thought that was kind of funny.
He keeps taking it off, too. I feel like Grandma's coming after you with a belt. And he hog ties him with his own clothes. Altman hog ties Hendrix with his own clothes. The names have too many of the same letters in them.
Yeah.
So after securing the crazy cargo, he then sees a weird billowing pink tissue out in the water.
That's
Down
after
near
he
the
sees the
seafloor.
fish.
It's after the creepy nightmare fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he gets some of the tissue gets on the window, and realizing that something is really wrong here, he decides to return to the surface rather than wait for Hendrix to break free and kill him all. In chapter 37, Hendrix wakes up as they rise, and Altman shoos him again and knocks him out before he clues Markov into what happened with very few specifics. Altman kind of selectively edits what he tells Markov.
Yep.
He decides to copy all of the video info, the crazy, creepy fish, the billowing pink tissue, all that stuff, and to try and scrape some of the weird tissue residue off the bathyscaphe in case Markov locks access down. And he comes up with a plan to use Hendrix as a distraction. He's a very wily dude. So as they get closer and closer to docking with the floating facility, Hendrix, he teases Hendrix into an absolutely crazy fury, and Hendrix then escapes and jumps on him and is like throttling Altman half to death. The guards bust in, they knock Hendrix over and free Altman, who gets up and runs away yelling he doesn't know what he's doing. And Altman then jumps into the water, or pretends to fall into the water on the outside like a comedy almost, and then scrapes some of the tissue off the window.
Yep.
And then thrusts it deep into his pocket.
Deep into his pocket, indeed. And then he manages to escape. So I like this chapter because it's got a little bit of physical humor. It's got a little bit of like conniving and wiliness.
Yeah.
I thought I had a little comic relief, too.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of ridiculous descriptions and over-the-top adjectives. And teasing Hendrix is really devious. He's like, "You abandoned your father," and Hendrix loses it.
Yep. When Hendrix was talking with Markov over the radio, and Altman just kind of disappears.
Yeah, what was that? Nothing.
What was that? That was me trying to survive. I thought that was a pretty comical.
It never gets brought up again that, like, wouldn't Hendrix have a giant boot print on the side of his head?
Yeah.
I feel like that should come into the debrief, which is the next chapter.
Yep.
Markov and Altman have a debrief. Markov scrupulously avoids asking Altman any questions about the boot prints on Hendrix's head. And Markov also decides that Altman has no choice but to go down back to the bottom of the crater again. Altman attempts to bargain for safety restraints and a tranquilizer gun, and Markov kind of emptily threatens him, but agrees to everything.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it. I thought, though, that this entire chapter could have been a single paragraph in the next chapter.
Yeah.
There's nothing particularly effective about debriefing so soon.
The only other thing I have is that the signal changes people when it's the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
So you're
about all
wrapping
you
up.
gather.
Yeah, so I thought this could have been a single paragraph, maybe a couple paragraphs in the next chapter.
Yeah, and that Hendrix is
Yep,
heavily drugged right now.
Yep, so in then 39, Hendrix, with his boot print, wakes up delusional and childlike and very confused. A nurse comes in to check on him after he rips out the IV out of his arm, and he murders her in a sort of detached way. Says his body does things to her.
He rips her throat out with his teeth.
Yes, and then his body does some other things to her. And then he hallucinates his father again, who cautions him against convergence or meddling with the marker, which is useless because then the guards show up and they kill or incapacitate him. It's not clear from the chapter which one they do.
Nope.
Something explodes and knocks him off to the side.
It just says, I will lay here for a while.
I thought this chapter was kind of sad. There's something tragic in a man being reduced to a child mentality like that and just not being capable of making choices anymore. Jumping forward in chapter 40, Altman takes his tissue sample to an ichthyologist who does not recognize it. I had to look up what an ichthyologist is. It is a fish doctor. He also shows his discovery to Scud and the scientist friend from earlier who refuses to agree to anything that is not empirically true. And Scud proves that it is alive by shocking it with wires and getting it to twitch, which is another reference to The Thing. Hot wires. Yep, that's what Kurt Russell does in The Thing.
And middle school.
And that wasn't electric shock, that was heat.
It was fire on the wire, but yeah, same idea.
It was the heated wire.
Yeah, he burns it, scalds it to get it to move to show that it's alive.
Yep.
And then the old guy yells, "Get me off this couch."
Yep.
So I always yell that along with it.
In chapter 40, it also says that the guards did shoot Hendrix after the attack.
Yes. Yep. Finally, Altman learns that Hendrix is dead. It's the very last
Yep.
thing. The marker signal resumes, and then violence and suicides are going up. And
Yep.
Ada and Altman talk about this real quickly.
Yep. Headaches, insomnia, and suicides, and about how it wasn't normal for the whole station to experience that much.
But before they can come to any real conclusion, Markov shows up and says, "You're going back down." 15 minutes later. So I thought there was some weird disconnection here in the way that, like, the Markov and Ada thing, I felt that should have been its own chapter. It was distinctly different in tone and purpose, but that's okay. That's my biggest complaint with the book, is that sometimes the chapters are arranged in ways that don't really make sense. And that brings us to part 5. So before we start that, what did you think of part 4?
I actually forgot. I was so engrossed with the book, I actually forgot to write down my part 5 notes for this one. But overall, I mean, it's the same as the rest of the book so far. It's very well written, very engrossing. We're still building to the climax here.
Yep.
And it's very clear. It's a very slow build.
What do you think, Jen? Part 4.
Especially part 4. I mean, I was getting to the point where at my half an hour break, I was probably reading 8 or 9 chapters in half an hour.
Yeah, flying through it.
Yeah.
I like part 4.
Yep. I felt the pace picked up a lot here, too.
Yep.
Except for chapter 33.
Except for chapter 33, yeah.
33 was a beast. Right in the summary for that one almost broke me. So, in part 5, Collapse is what it's called. Altman makes 2 more trips. One, he goes down and his partner has a psychotic break. And the other, he goes with the psychologist, Dr. Stevens, who doesn't flip out, but he still behaves kind of creepy. And on the 3rd trip that he takes to retrieve the driller bathyscaphe sub that Dantec and Hennessy were still in, they get their very first glimpse of the marker.
Yes.
Which is the first time that Altman and anybody else from Markov's team has seen it with their own eyes. We get another pretty good little description bit of it and trying to describe how strange it looks in the natural world. But then they get weirded out. They take some video footage and kind of keep their distance. And they even manage to free the old bathyscaphe, which was the purpose of their mission.
Yeah, they shot the ballast chambers in the original F7.
Yeah.
Because then it would slowly start to rise up to the surface.
Yep. And when they do that, there's this brief little moment where Altman's able to see inside the sub, and he sees body parts against the window. So it's obviously a nightmare in there. And his co-pilot is beginning to lose it, so he immediately drops his own ballast and rises to the surface.
Begins to rise, yes.
So it's clear that they must be doing some sort of profiling experiment with him to figure out who is affected and who's not. In chapter 42, then, they arrive back at the facility, and Altman manages to steal the core sample from the recovered bathyscaphe. He even says, like, he's beginning to make a habit of this. It then becomes clear that through leaks that Markov is fully intending to bring the marker up aboard the facility. We already kind of knew that from his conversation with Lenny Small, but this is the first time that anybody else knows. And there's a couple weird run-ins with characters that leak information when they shouldn't, because people are beginning to come unhinged and making questionable decisions and questionable judgments.
Yep.
So the closer they get to this event, the worse it's going to get.
The only other thing is all of the previously notated marker symptoms, suicides, attacks, etc. are now on the rise again.
It's on the rise because it's active again. In chapter 43, Altman then takes a man named Torquato on a dive to the marker. Whether Torquato is a scientist and of what sort is not really clear. He kind of just shrugs the questions off. He says, it would be boring.
He's part of Markov's inner circle.
Yeah, he's some sort of spook scientist from the intelligence community. He's got a little box with him, and when Altman tries to figure out what's going on, he kind of covers it up and refuses to acknowledge anything.
Yeah, it's got one dial and one analog
thing.
Yeah,
analog pegger.
It sounds like one of Barry Dodd's pieces of equipment.
Yes, it does.
It almost sounds like a weird version of a seismograph,
seismograph or a Geiger counter.
Geiger counter, I think.
But it's not measuring radiology because that would have been obvious.
Yep.
So I don't know what the heck it's doing. He can't really get anything else out of Torquato because he's so focused on the gadget. And then all of a sudden he goes nuts. And he breaks out of his restraints and attacks Altman. Not with a shoe this time, but he does cold cock him. And when Altman comes to, he finds a raving Torquato trying to open the hatch. And he's yelling at himself, saying, "I'm trying, I tell you I'm trying." But he can't open the hatch.
Too much pressure.
Too much pressure.
Luckily.
Yeah. The bathyscaphe, or the sub, is also tilted on its side.
Yeah.
Which adds kind of weird element to this.
And it's also like right up against the marker.
Yeah. They're like point blank on it. So there's a weird little fight scene here where Altman jumps on him, dropping off a ladder to fall on top of Torquato to take him out, but it doesn't quite work. It's brutal and visceral, the fight scene.
Yes.
And it winds up with Altman bashing his head in.
No, he strangles him.
Oh, does he strangle? He knocks his head to knock him out, right? And then he puts his hands on his neck.
Yep.
And he strangles him because between bashing his head in and strangling him, Altman realizes the oxygen recirculator, again, is broken. And he won't have enough oxygen. Yeah, definitely a recurring theme and mistake. I don't know why they don't just put a big heavy piece of sheet metal over it. Keep him away from it. This limits the amount of oxygen that Altman has, and he's forced to make a choice. Is he going to suffocate while trying to keep this other guy alive, or is he going to just barely make it himself? And he decides to kill him. And in the last couple of minutes there, after Torquato struggles, he sees the man kind of come back to himself, just like all the other people who have died because of the marker, but he kills him anyway, because it's kind of a me or him situation.
Which I kind of thought that had a little bit of irony to it, because of Dantak's previous situation with the oxygen.
I thought the same thing.
The only other thing is Altman's also now starting to see dead people.
Yes, that's what happens next in the chapter.
First he hallucinates Torquato coming back to life to attack him.
And he's like, "You're not real, go away."
And then he he thinks it's real. He thinks he's come back to life.
Yeah.
And
says, "What do you want?" And he's like, "This." But he doesn't believe the hallucination, so it attacks him and knocks him out again.
Yep.
And then he's visited when he wakes up by Ada's mother, who is dead. And she is telling him that convergence is death, but she can't really clarify for him, just like with all the other previous ghosts.
Yep.
So we get another anti-marker ghost.
Yep.
I thought it was an interesting chapter. Had a good pace, good mix, good visceral fight scene. Snappy.
Agreed.
A little funny. And the moral choice that he has to make there is pretty heavy. Chapter 44, Altman regains consciousness again, but this time with Markov, Stevens, and the others back on the floating facility. So he survived. And he tries to explain what the ghost told him about convergence, but he is incoherent. And then Markov orders him drugged. He comes to again in the same room with Markov, or in a hospital room with Markov, Dr. Stevens, and Krax. This is the first time we've been introduced to Krax. And he's a mean-looking member of Markov's inner circle. Altman is forced to debrief with them again, and Markov orders him to tell Stevens everything from there on out. Nightmares, hallucinations, yada yada, whatever. I thought the chapter could have been cut in half. And I also think that the over-reliance on consciousness and coming to and fro it's a little much. It happens like 5 times in the span of 2 chapters. In chapter 45, then, Altman begins to be haunted by many different dead from his life.
Yep.
Teachers, parents, aunts and uncles, everybody, basically. But nothing seems to click in the way that others have succumbed to the hallucinations, which is interesting. And it almost seems as if the marker is searching for something that is a weak point for him, but it doesn't find anything. The ghosts both praise and condemn convergence, and this is the first time we know of anybody who's being lambasted on both sides. Everybody else has been pro or against.
Yep.
He finally does tell Ada about seeing her mother, and she's super distressed that the ghost decided to visit him and not her. And she doesn't really see the point. And then she too begins to see her mother shortly after that. And she begins to lose her mind. they seem to be conscious on some level that they're being manipulated, but with the exception of Altman, anybody who's being manipulated by the marker doesn't seem to care. So it's kind of strange in the way that they are apathetic to their own growing psychosis.
Well, that and in Ada's case, she actually prefers.
Yeah, to see her mother. She doesn't care. And that's true of a lot of the other ones later on. Dr. Guth stands out in my mind.
Yeah. Chapter 45 is also the first time Altman notices the new religion.
Yes. And
based on the marker.
Part of this is that the marker's broadcasting and the cult is beginning to stick out. This is another super long chapter, but the line that stood out to me here is as he looks at how Ada is responding, he says, either the marker, wants a lot of us mad or dead, or what it's saying is literally destroying us, which is very Lovecraftian. You can't handle that kind of horror and that kind of truth on a cosmic level.
Cthulhu.
And I thought that was really creepy. So violence and mania, psychotic breaks are continuing to rise, and Markov proceeds with whatever his plan is. And then Altman stumbles into the first cult-like gathering that Jenn mentioned, people who seem to be worshiping the marker. Altman is super creeped out and not okay with this, but he kind of just runs away until Ada begins to spout this proto-unitologist nonsense and marker worship. Altman then learns that they believe the marker was sent by God for humanity's benefit and will lead them into the next phase of existence, echoing the pro-convergence ghosts. Hooray for him.
That, and they also believe that Altman is a prophet chosen by the marker.
The reluctant prophet, as they call him.
After this, in this very long chapter, Altman makes 2 more dives in the sub, and he learns a little bit more, but very little, about convergence from the ghosts of Ada's mother. It's going to be very bad, is what it boils down to. But she can't be specific. Maybe because however it's trying to describe it is destroying them. Goes back to that quote. Finally, he's visited by Field, who is still alive. Field is not a ghost yet. Who wants him to join their cult as a prophet. He refuses, and they interpret this as it's a test of faith. I thought the chapter itself worked pretty well. This is one of those crux chapters in advancing the cult front and distracting Altman and distancing Ada and Altman and their relationship, and also in advancing Markov's plans. But it's doing too much to be one chapter.
Yeah.
It needs to be two.
Well, see, I had the opposite on this one. I thought that the lengthy chapter to explain what was going on could have been explained in half the length. And it's just easily explained, just a little less wordy.
Yeah. It's a long one. There's a couple more of those throughout this half of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think that it's interesting, too, that the pro-convergence side seems to be winning out, and I wonder if that isn't a little bit of a statement about humanity in general, that they prefer to be diluted rather than resist,
Yeah.
Maybe.
Because nobody, with the exception of Altman, is anti-convergence. Everybody is giving in or doesn't know what's going on.
Well, that and it also goes back to the whole people are sheeps.
Yeah, which plays in with the Scientology and Unitology thing.
Yep.
So in 46, then, Markov sends Altman to oversee the lifting of the marker via nets. And as soon as it's up and running, Markov orders Altman back to the facility and changes the plan abruptly. And he begins to make his play here to take complete control of the marker. Altman attempts to resist, but Markov threatens to kill Ada again, and Altman has to give in.
Markov states that Altman is now far less useful now that the marker wasn't in the deep water.
Yep.
And he could use his conventional subs to get them.
Yep.
And
that deep water craft is no longer required.
And that Altman is becoming expendable.
What his plan is, though, remains a mystery. Even Altman's not really sure, and the marker gets sucked up into one of the restricted access domes. 47, then, when Altman returns, he tries to go right to where he thinks the marker is going to be held, but armed guards stop him. They refuse to let him in, so he turns around and he goes to Field, our favorite cultist. And he tells Field basically that the marker wants me to help it, and they agree to get Altman a chance to see the marker. And Field makes a connection with somebody who is sympathetic to the cult inside Markov's inner circle, a dude named Harmon. Harmon gives Altman a black jumpsuit and a fake badge and basically says, if you're with me, then they're going to believe you and that's going to be cool. And so he gets him into the marker chamber where Altman abruptly begins taking video of the marker. And Harmon's like, why do you need that? And he's like, don't worry, bro. The marker told me to. And so he gets away with it for like 5 minutes. And then they have a shift of guard change, and they can't be in there anymore. The whole thing makes Altman and Harmon really nervous. And then at the very end, Altman decides to leak the footage of the marker, but then he's sent packing by Markov and sent back to the land. In 48, we learn that Markov is beginning to come apart at the seams too. He can't find anything good about the marker. It's obviously not controllable in the conventional sense. And he knows that the scientists are beginning to succumb to the marker cult, which is growing really quickly. And he's afraid it's within his guards too, which we know it is.
Yep.
He and Krax decide not to give in to their demands to see the marker, though, and in fact decide to actively suppress them. Krax is super excited about this opportunity to advance his career. Within just days, the cultists stage a small revolt, and they lay siege to the marker chamber, and they demand access.
Yes.
Krax shows up, and he's like, go away, and they're like, no, and he's like, open fire.
Pretty much.
And Krax has the best day he can remember. Phil gets shot in the leg here.
Yep. By Krax.
Yeah.
In the foot, not in the leg.
Is it in the foot?
It is in the foot.
Later on, he shows Altman a patch on his leg.
No, it's on his foot.
I think he also gets tagged in the leg because right after Krax shoots, some of the people, the believers, are guards that have the little plasma guns as well, and it's just incoherent fire.
Fired everybody. The cultists give in ultimately, immediately is the point, and Krax is just willingly, happily hurting these people.
He's like, yeah, get to shoot at things.
Now, from my perspective, I don't have any sympathy because I know they're crazy.
Yeah,
but within the context, it is a little bit out of hand. Like, it's heavy-handed in the way that a sledgehammer is a heavy tool. In chapter 49...
Wait.
Oh, okay. Proceed.
The way Krax suppresses the rebellion is that he fires upon the marker.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Shoot, I have that right in here, too. Yeah, that's what gives him to give in.
And he shoots it 3 times, and on the 3rd shot, everyone experiences a massive shot of pain.
Yes.
In their head.
And then they, all the believers lay down their guns, and they all get locked up.
So, all right, jumping forward then, in chapter 49, back in the Dredger Corp land compound, Altman, Ada, and the other scientists are basically being held prisoner. Altman becomes aware that the pulse signal is on again, which is mostly through intuition, until Scud sets up a hard, jerry-rigged...
some sort of jury-rigged sensor.
Yeah, and when they try to get him to do a little bit of location, he goes, cannot confirm. So we get, again, that empirical resistance that makes Scud an endearing character. Tim, Tom, Terry are also the guards here, which seems like a terrible idea. They're not much more than Muppets. And cultist activity begins to rise again as the pulse signal comes back online. Altman realizes how easy it would be to manipulate them, for his own will, basically, to escape. But he's afraid of putting another death on his conscience and holds off.
Altman escapes with Ada in tow.
Not yet.
Because...
Not yet.
Yes, that's the end of 49.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's
Yep.
a time slip.
It's one of those 2 things happening in succession.
This is where a chapter break would have been really useful.
When one of the twins, Tim or Tom...
It is Tim finds Tom.
Yep, okay, so then all right.
But
so
we don't. But at the end of 49, we don't know which one it is.
we know who's at the door because it was Tim.
I think so.
So if we jump forward to 50, we find
No. I'm talking right now in chapter 49.
Well, who abandons his post?
That's
Tim.
It's got to be Tim.
Altman doesn't know that.
No, but it also doesn't matter.
Fair enough. I'm arguing a moot point. Yes, Tim is on guard, and he was hallucinating.
His dad.
Dropped his weapon, but
Yeah.
we don't know that.
We don't know
yet.
that, no. We just see that he just walks by him, right?
Yep, allows Altman to escape with Ada in tow, and then
Yep.
that's the end of the chapter.
And then we jump into Tim's head, but like 10 minutes earlier.
Yep.
And Tim is on duty when all of a sudden he's visited by his dad, and this is the weird one-sided part that Altman sees. So Tim's on duty, he's visited by his dad, Altman kind of sees it at the same time, and we get this endearing little conversation between Tim and his father. His dad doesn't seem to love him as much as Tom.
No.
I kind of got that implication that Tim is the
Yep.
less favorite of the TM vowel sons. And his dad encourages him to go check on Tom because something has happened to him.
Tom has stopped talking.
Tom has stopped talking to him because he was talking to he was being coached by the other side, I think is what his dad says,
Yep.
while he like tamps down his pipe and acts all like, oh, Father Eddie. And so Tim asks his dad to hold his gun, which of course the ghost can't, but that's okay because he'll pick it up when he's all done working with his pipe, and then he takes off and blows past Altman, and he finds Tom dead.
Yep.
He can smell him before he gets there because these guys are kind of more animal than they are person.
And Tom had slit his own throat.
Yep. So sad scene. Tim and Tom are lovable oafs, except now it's just Tim. In 51, jumping forward, Markov and Krax discover that Altman has escaped and gone public with his video footage on news channels in North America. Enraged, they decide to go stamp the problem out right now.
That's it.
Advances the plot.
Markov's quote is, "It's time to stamp out this problem."
Yep. It's worth noting, it's going to come up in the next chapter, but it is worth noting that Altman leaves all the craziness out and just says they have some sort of weird artifact.
Yes.
Yep.
He leaves out the crazy throat-slitting madness.
Yep.
Which means he's at least sane enough to make said decision still.
And that brings on part 6, Hell Unleashed.
Yep.
Yeah, part 5 I thought it's progressively getting quicker to read, and also that they're slowly murdering characters.
Yeah, they are definitely shortening the cast.
Yeah, they are.
If George R. R. Martin could get there, man, we already have been done with the Song of Ice and Fire series. All right, I liked it. Hell Unleashed, we're at 4 hours and 28 minutes. For the love of Odin.
Good Lord.
After Altman returns in chapter 52 from his interviews, he discovers that Markov and crew have blown a hole in his wall. Ada is missing, and they ask him to come back. He refuses, and they make him by forcing Ada as a hostage again. Also, the guys are going to fix the wall so no one would know they were there.
Yep. I think it's kind of comical to note that they are staying at the Watergate.
Yes, I did notice that. The historic Watergate.
The historic Watergate.
Also, Altman has become way too important to the marker and to all of the investigations and to the followers of the marker to lose or be killed.
Markov can't kill him, but he can definitely drag him back.
Yep.
So they bring Altman back to the floating facility, and Dr. Stevens tries to get Altman to give his secrets about the marker up because they're convinced that the marker's saying things that they can't hear, yada yada, you're the chosen one, no I'm not.
This is chapter 53, by the way.
What'd I say?
You didn't give a chapter.
I don't know. It all blends together at this point. I've actually read the book twice at this point because I went back to take notes after the second time. So obviously, Altman doesn't have any more information. He can't give it up, but Dr. Stevens is convinced that he does. So they turn him over to Dr. Krax. He's not actually a doctor.
Officer
Krax. And Officer Krax begins to torture him. But of course, he can't really get anything out of him, and he's not even really asking him anything. He's just softening him up. While this is happening and he's beginning to torture Altman, Dr. Stevens then goes to Markov and says that he's concerned that the believers will riot if they don't release Altman and at least make a show of him. Markov is a little annoyed by this because he's given him to Krax to play with, and he's got to take away Krax's toy.
Yep.
So Altman ends up then he's completely powerless. He ends up back at Dr. Stevens' office, and still can't really do anything. He doesn't know anything. He can't say what he doesn't know. And then they kind of let him go and give him run the facility again, which was surprising to me, but whatever. He has a run-in with Field, who is completely out of his mind. Yep. Field is a baked potato at this point. So later on, I don't know how long a jump of time this is because it begins to come a little unhinged, but Altman calls Stevens to bat around the idea of convergence. I guess he's following Markov's orders by sharing his thoughts. I don't know. I don't know why he'd call Stevens of all people. Stevens is up because he doesn't really sleep anymore when the dead won't shut up. They conclude that convergence is probably bad, but Stevens has become a reluctant believer, which surprises Altman.
Yep.
And he cites something like Pascal's wager and explains that that's why he convinced Markov to release Altman. For those who don't know, Pascal's wager is basically that you might as well believe in God because if it's true, then you get to go to heaven. If it's not, then it makes no difference. So, all things being equal, you might as well believe in God.
Yep. And he calls it Altman's wager.
And Altman decides to make Altman's wager, which kind of goes back to earlier in the book, where somebody else decides to act as if something is true for the same reason.
Yep.
And Altman here decides he's going to proceed to do what the marker wants and pretend to, because otherwise he can't go forward. He calls it Altman's wager.
This is also the first official mention of unitology.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
That's all I got.
Field says unitology, doesn't he?
Yep. Chapter 54.
All right. Showalter makes a breakthrough when he realizes that the marker seems to be broadcasting DNA. Showalter realizes that the symbols on the marker appear to represent DNA. At the same time, another scientist makes a breakthrough about the pulse that is also linked to DNA. So Dr. Guth appears to have realized that the broadcast is some form of DNA that's roughly approximate to human DNA.
No, you got it backward.
Is it backwards?
Yes.
I got a little lost here.
Showalter finds that the writing on the marker resembles
That's the
early
one that
human
resembles.
DNA,
Yeah.
while Guth finds that the pulse transmitting another DNA sequence
Something
entirely.
else, and they don't know what it
Yes.
is, and that's what he's synthesizing
Yeah.
in his lab. So they have a little bit of a disagreement. They're both believers, and they send Altman to try and figure it out because he's got magic answers from the magic rock. Showalter suggests that maybe it's recording DNA somehow too.
Possibly,
And
yes.
that they've got the genome sequence. They don't know why it would be doing that, but whatever.
The way that I understood it was that the signal is a different sequence, which could be used to change the human DNA to become.
Yeah, that's what's broadcast.
I think that was just me
Altman
improvising,
also
that's
thinks,
what I got too.
Altman also thinks that maybe the missing piece, the missing core sample, is what broke it.
It has to do with make us whole again.
Yes. However, that was the game. Make Us Whole Again was the game.
It comes up in the book too.
Does it?
Yeah.
I missed it.
Yeah.
Showalter explains that it was already tried with no success.
Yep. So then he goes to visit Dr. Guth. Dr. Guth is a German who speaks with a terrible German accent in the book. And he hypothesizes the difference here is the code signal is holding clues to convergence and maybe, like Jenn suggested, in some way altering the DNA around them. But he also thinks maybe the marker's confused. So if they can fix the marker and its confusion, then maybe they can stop it from breaking everybody around it.
Yep.
But we also, and this is where we confirmed the missing piece doesn't solve the issue because the marker itself is structurally identical down to its most basic elements. It's an expression of its own core, which is kind of like DNA, I suppose. It's a good representation of a scientific argument. The guys disagree fundamentally. They've come to completely different conclusions, and yet they don't act like idiots about it. They decide to have an independent mediator, somebody who else is an expert and knows how to do this. Nice. 55, Guth supervises the synthesis of his marker-based life form. After dismissing his team, who is completely run ragged, he is then visited. He really wishes for, fantasizes, fetishizes until it happens, the ghost of a young woman with whom he'd been in love, but who did not love him back.
Who had never met him.
Yeah, never met him. Just creepy.
I believe he showed up on an accident scene, and
Yeah.
This was after he had stalked her for months.
Yeah, she died, and he had missed his chance. That's how he felt, because he had completely doesn't really regret that she's dead. Regrets that he never took his chance.
yeah,
He's a creepy dude. But
then-
ultimately, she can't get the message about convergence across to him because he thinks maybe he wants her too much and not the message. He's not a good enough believer. So the ghost goes away, right?
Yep.
And then is replaced with his angry German grandma who yells at him for not being smart enough.
Which she pops out of the table.
Yes. He's not bothered by this.
Nope.
Again, subjective linearity here in the hallucinations. He tries to drive her away because she doesn't want him. He doesn't want her meddling, and she needs to get him to listen because he's a stupid boy. And eventually, to shut her up, decides to inject himself with a little bit of sedative, which of course
wasn't sedative.
isn't the sedative. Yeah.
It was the mutated pink goo that he
That he was
growing.
experimenting with. He cut in half and it stitched itself together.
Mm-hmm. So he pulls the alarm as soon as he realizes what he's done because, again, when the marker finally kills you, it lets you have yourself back again because it likes to play with you like a cat. And when he pulls the alarm, he turns the entire facility onto high alert. But he also kind of remembers something that the ghost said about how the marker is what's going to save you, so he takes off running for the marker, thinking if he gets to it, somehow it's going to cure him. But that doesn't work. So he has to push his way past the guards, and they shoot him, but he doesn't care. All that matters is getting to the marker.
He's the one that gets shot in the leg.
Is he the one that gets shot in the leg?
He gets shot in the leg.
Okay. All the believers kind of blend together. Big herd. But he gets in, and when he gets within the marker's whatever area of effect,
Dead space.
yeah, the dead space, it stops the mutation, and his mind kind of comes back to him.
Yeah, it doesn't make his arm any worse, but it also doesn't make it any better.
Yeah, it just brings it to a halt.
Yep.
But then Crack shows up and shoots him in the head,
Yep.
Yep.
which kind of pisses Markov off. because that was unnecessary. And they
And-
cart the body away for dissection.
Yep.
I'd say that, and Markov really wanted to study him and see what would actually happen while he was alive.
Markov also tells Krax that he is more expendable than he was 10 minutes ago.
Do you think Markov has a little pocketbook that he carries around in his breast pocket that's like the Expendables? And then he just he just draws arrows throughout the day and has to redo it at the end of probably every meal because people shift on priority of like murder.
Either that or he has hash marks as to how many times have you
Tallies.
today.
How many times have you messed up?
Yeah, so then in chapter 56, Guth's corpse mutates, but they don't realize what's going on because it's apparently a really bumpy ride on the
Stretchers don't crack. Stretchers creak. We deal
I
with
know.
stretchers. No.
Everybody's out of their mind at this point, so I'm going to chalk it up to Marker's interference and the fact that they're all seeing dead people everywhere.
Anywho.
Guth causes the transformation of 2 other scientists, and the epidemic begins.
Yep. He kills everybody as a necromorph with the blades in the shoulders, and then they begin to turn too, and they shamble off. And,
Except for one. One escapes.
yeah, is that Ishimura who escapes?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any connection between the names there, or is it just a
I
little drop?
think so.
there? Okay, because I didn't see any real connection. I wondered if it was just a name drop. Hideki Ishimura.
Yeah.
The other thing is Field saw it all on the video feed.
Yeah.
And the other notation I put is, guess what? The infection has started. Have fun,
I
children.
wrote, holy that was vicious.
Not nearly as vicious as
I was trying to burn through the book at this point.
Hendrix trying to, rip the nurse's
Oh, yeah.
throat out.
No, on scale of Hendrix to Guth, Guth is definitely below Hendrix in my little tally book.
Your Markov style tally book?
My Markov.
Okay.
In 57, Ada visits Altman as a ghost, and she says that she wants a baby. To
That's
be
a
fair,
dream.
early.
That's a dream.
Oh, is it a dream? He
Yeah,
wakes
yeah,
up
dream.
then? Okay.
It's a dream.
Well, either way, it happens. Right?
Yes.
And it's a hallucination by the marker. I was going to say earlier, my wife does not appreciate when I demand convergence. I don't appreciate when she visits me in a dream and demands babies. The alarm that Guth pulls then wakes him up, and Field calls, explains what happens, and Altman rushes to find a weapon. He runs into a scientist friend who tells him what we already know. Body shots don't kill necromorphs. And we learn that the infection is spreading really fast. Like, everybody's already dead.
Pretty much.
In a span of like 15 minutes.
Well, tight spaces. Lots of people.
And probably not a big crew as we expect either.
No, Markov
Markov
says it's 200 to 300.
Is it 200 to 300?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a couple hundred. So there's not a lot of people here to kill.
Nope.
The entire chapter here is just brutal, visceral fighting.
Yep.
And in the labs, they equip themselves with plasma cutters, which are the best weapons in the known universe, and other gear.
Different type of plasma cutter.
I don't care.
This one seems to have a blade.
I thought these were nice game connections. They drop a lot of names to gear from the game. I like that a lot. And
Pulse rifles all the way.
Oh my god. Keep your Halo Call of Duty nonsense to some other podcast. Get out of here. I like my tools. I also thought that it was cool that they ran and immediately equipped themselves with tools rather than weapons.
Yeah.
That's just, it's in line with the game.
Very
It's
much
also
so.
Cool. In chapter, do you have anything else, Jen? Did I miss anything?
The only other thing was that all the mutants, all the creatures seem to be on the lower levels. So far, there's none on the upper levels yet.
Mhm.
And that's where Field is like, hey, guys, you need to come up here.
The airlock between the upper and the lower sections.
The field is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, so that's where they're all attempting to migrate.
Makes sense. I wish this facility had been given a name.
Giant research
The dome.
bubble
The
butt
dome.
The dome.
thing.
You know that's what it would have been named. The
Should
dome.
have called it the Titanic.
Pretty much.
In chapter 58, Markov and Krax try to analyze the situation, and they realize they've got to run away. Markov does not want to do this, but Krax kind of smooth talks it as a tactical retreat.
Yes.
And Markov's like, that's a great idea. And Markov, as the stereotypical killer spook here, is completely out of place as a character because he's got no contingency, I guess. I would think he'd have 1 billion contingencies, including a personal elevator, queued to his own iris. It's got just enough room for one person. And then the sound of the spools as it goes up will be like, ha ha ha, bye, Krax. It'll just be engineered in there. Because he's got a rotating supervillain chair. But, he also threatens Krax for no apparent reason. If this is a dude charged with his personal safety, in a zombie apocalypse, maybe don't threaten him and tell him he's expendable.
Yep. Yeah, it's Markov, Stevens, and Cracks.
Oh, Stevens is there too?
Yep.
I don't care.
I
was focused on getting to the end of the book.
Yeah, Markov makes it very clear that Cracks is now very expendable.
He's got an extra tally mark now.
The only other thing is Markov mentions that they can see everything on the security cameras.
Yeah.
So they can see all the destruction while being safe on their little love boat.
And that comes in later on too. They're able to witness what's going on in the facility. Jumping forward, 59, Altman and crew continue to struggle to escape. They encounter a vast tissue growth, just like in the game. It's sticky and goopy and weird. Then they encounter a creeper that sounds like a gelatinous cube from D&D. Sucks up everything. It's got a skull floating in it.
Or a slime from Minecraft.
Yeah. Just one of those things. It kind of traps them because they know they can't touch it. It traps them between a wall and a hallway filled with necromorphs. Altman tries to improvise a flamethrower, awesome, to drive it back, but then they're attacked by more necromorphs, kind of forcing the point. So while he's forcing it back, they're fighting behind him. One of the scientists dies.
Both of them die.
One of them dies at first because he goes down in like a cloud of them.
Yes.
And then they try to run, but then Showalter's killed.
Yep. He falls into the creeper, as he calls it.
Goodbye.
Yep, and as does the necromorph.
And that's the end of that.
Yep.
So Altman is finally alone. He presses on, doesn't really see a point to it, but he continues because he's got to stay alive and because he's the chosen one, yada yada, until he stumbles across a recording of Ada that she's set. He doesn't know it's a recording at first, but she's saying that she's okay. She's not okay. It's repeating, so that kind of gets him motivation to keep going to try and rescue her. And as he climbs upward in the facility, he encounters a huge necromorph spider thing. Just like in the game, it has a yellow weak spot that he shoots to kill it. I was trying to put this together. Which monster is it?
Don't know.
Okay, I'm thinking it's from the second game, but I'm not 100% sure.
That's what I was trying to figure out because I'm like, I know.
I was like, I don't recognize this.
Because like even the explodey ones with the thing on their arms aren't that.
The ones with the big booger arms.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that there's some sort of centaur necromorph in the second one, and that's what this reminded me of, but I can't remember for sure.
I got a very The Thing vibe off of this one.
Big nasty spider built of limbs and bodies.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's definitely not the brute.
No. Because the brute runs like an ape.
Yeah, like a big gorilla. And it's not. It can't be a regular. So I don't know which one it corresponds to. But maybe it is just a drop to the second game. I'm not 100% sure. Altman reaches the airlock after killing the spider thing, but it's locked until Field, his good buddy, lets him in. Altman then realizes that Ada's dead.
Yep.
Welcome to the party. The rest of us were already well aware of it.
Because he hallucinates her in the boat. He's
then sort of swept along by Field on a quest to escape and get help from the mainland. Except, not long after, Field is killed by a horrible snakehead monster brutally on the ladder.
Yeah, I don't know which one this one is either.
It's the head with the tentacles that's like sweep out of it, right?
No.
Is it that or is it the one-legged one?
See, I thought it was the tentacle that like came out of the wall the way they described it.
No,
because it wraps itself around his head and like pops his eyes out, and then it crawls into his intestines.
It was described as gray and snake-like.
It's got to be the one-legged tentacle, like the tripod tentacle things, not the one with the head with the legs that stick out of it.
Well, yeah, because when he goes
one
back
of the other
down,
ones that like wraps itself around stuff.
Maybe
because remember when he goes back down later in the book, he has to fight one off.
Yeah, it's got to be the one-armed tentacle thing.
Maybe.
Might be an inconsistency between the book and the game.
Maybe.
It's definitely that one, though, because that's what it does in the game, is when it gets on you, it wraps itself around your neck.
And it pops
his
head off like
and he rips it off, and then he like rips it in pieces and throws it apart. So it's got to be the tentacle one. Very The Thing, though. This thing, too.
Yeah. Either way, Field's head is popped off like a grape.
And then he falls to his death. Well,
he's already dead.
Falls to his fate, I suppose.
He fumbles and go gets nom-nom.
Altman barely escapes with his life before being visited by the ghost of Field, begging him to come back and join the party and to stop the now started convergence.
Yep.
The tone of the ghost.
I want to make this point.
Go ahead.
Because this is how I interpreted it. Altman rides away in a boat. Rides off into the sunset.
Yep.
But
pretty sure he's not going to come back, but then maybe he's kind of sure he's going to come back.
Yeah.
I don't like this next chapter. Altman takes the boat from the facility to Chixculub docks. He's met by Chava and the Nameless Drunk, and they tell him that the Bruja says to take them back. He doesn't turn back and go back to the facility. Instead, he goes to the Dredger Corp compound. Why? I don't know. He knocks on the door and is refused entry by Terry, and what I can only imagine was a Wizard of Oz moment. He pulls it across and is like, "You're not allowed!" And Altman, walks away. I don't know what the heck his plan is supposed to be, but then somebody inside tells Terry to go get Altman. Obviously, he's up to something, and Terry comes back and points a gun at him. Chava rattles the gate like a little monkey, and
then Altman shoots Terry's arm off.
Shoots his arm off, and then Terry's like, "Ah, what happened?" and collapses. Chava says, "I knocked for you," and says, "You got to come with me." And Altman goes, "Where's the drunk?" And he goes, "Oh, he was thirsty." The drunk just wandered away, as drunks do. Chava then brings Altman to his father's gun stash because they're ecological guerrilla warriors or something. And he
Thank
gears
God
up.
for tree huggers.
He says, "Thank God for tree huggers." And then Krax calls Altman and says, "Don't you want your girlfriend to be alive?" And Altman's like, "Show her to me." And that's when the game is up, basically. And Krax, his face finally breaks, and he's like, can't handle it anymore. And Altman hangs up on him. He's going to go back. I don't know why he went to the compound. I think that was kind of dumb. Poor Terry. Terry, Tim, and Tom got the worst shift in this book. Chapter 61, my notes here are real simple. Altman goes back alone, and on the way realizes the marker wants him to reproduce it.
Yeah.
That's
wants him to replicate it.
That's what it must mean by make a baby.
I mean, my thoughts at this point were also that the mutants are also partially the marker's offspring.
Yeah.
That's what Altman thinks as well.
Yeah. That's the end of part 6. We're almost at the end of the book here. What do you guys think of?
Pace picks up because this is, in my opinion, the climax of the book.
Yeah, this is the beginning of the end. I liked it. It was a hard fought fight to get through, and it's exhausting. And I definitely they nailed the tone of the game. And this is where the floating facility, rather than an aircraft carrier or something, becomes a pretty good decision because it's very Ishimura-like. I liked it. Stupid field. 62. Part 7. End of the world. Altman returns, fights through the nightmares, and eventually gets cut off on his way to the marker by another gelatinous creeper. He realizes he's going to have to cut through the water and is able to... Oh, wait, hang on. Altman gets a call from Harmon on one of the consoles nearby. Harmon's like, "Who are you? Who's down here
in the
with
system?"
me?" Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, yo, it's me. Remember me? I'm Almond." And they decide they're going to work together. Harmon's trapped. He's trapped at the marker, I think.
No.
Yeah, or he's in the marker chamber.
Harmon is a true believer, and the marker told him that he would be safe near him.
Yes. So he's trapped in the marker chamber where the other monsters won't go.
Yep, he's in the dead space.
Do they reference that as the
yes.
dead? Oh,
do they?
Missed
yes.
That.
Okay.
I thought he was being clever earlier.
No,
earlier with Guth, the ghost does say the dead space.
Oh.
But
completely missed that.
This is the marker. This is the dead space.
Gotcha. So there's just an orbital range around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently. Which doesn't explain why the
does
hive mind can come up and flail
Yeah.
while the marker's right next to it.
Maybe by that point the biomass has overcome the marker's compulsion.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Anyway.
So he gets Harmon to agree to both record or take a bunch of data on the marker and then also to open the submarine bay doors because he doesn't have access. Altman doesn't have access. I'm going to start calling him Almond. No. He agrees to get him to open up the doors. Harmon's like, "Why?" He's like, "Because I got to swim, bro." And then he swims.
Chapter 63 is he swims.
Altman swims the gap. He almost drowns. He blacks out finally, and then the ghost of his father wakes him up and yells at him to get up.
Yep.
Harmon walks him through the path to the marker chamber. He's got to fight a little bit more. Before he can get anywhere, though, a massive arm drags him through the airlock door.
Tentacle. Through the wall.
Big tentacle through the wall. He manages to escape it, fights his way back to Harmon, and Harmon doesn't believe him at first that it's him, thinks it's a hallucination. So Altman manipulates him by pulling on his cultist danglers.
Yep. If the marker says this, we can't come around, or if the marker says that the hallucinations can't come around, then how am I here?
Yeah. And Harmon lets him in. So then in chapter 64, Harmon greets him with crazy cultic nonsense, but agrees to share all of the data about the marker anyway with Almond. And then he urges Almond to touch the marker, and he embraces eternity. Altman be praised. That happens in this chapter. When Altman comes to, he is suddenly like Hennessy was, where he's figured it all out and has to write it down, but this time he doesn't just have a body near him. He's got a computer, and he's able to encode what the marker is trying to say to him. And this amounts to a mirror image of the marker, and he's able to broadcast it back with Harmon's help, and that seems to chill the marker out, and the madness is temporarily lifted. He tells it basically that we're going to rebuild you, and he has to go with Altman's wager, where he's like, really believes that he's going to have to rebuild it even if it takes years, and that puts it back into hibernation.
The one note I have is that Altman called the marker a she, which, goes to the whole back to the mother, baby,
Really?
wants to replicate. Yeah.
I missed
It's
that.
the end of the chapter. He calls the marker a she. It's right after he broadcasted the blueprint back to it.
So for our gentlemen listeners out there, when all of your in-laws turn into scythe-shouldered monsters or gibbering brutes or disembodied heads with tentacles, and you feel the compulsion to write symbols all over everything in feces or blood or whatever bodily fluid you have at hand, that is your significant female other deciding that it's time to have a baby. You just need to tell her that, and everything will go back to normal. Life advice from Dr. Travis.
No, you don't have a doctor yet. I refuse to call you Dr. Travis.
65. Altman and Harmon make a run for the control room, probably to sink the facility, although that's not what Altman quite says they're going to do. They encounter some necromorphs that are glitching out. They're doing a little dance, as if the marker is no longer driving them. I wish I had been able to see this in the game, where they're like T-pose and slowly rotating, like I saw several times in Mass Effect Andromeda. Maybe the marker had finally turned off in Andromeda. It is from a different galaxy. Once they get into the control room, Altman forces Harmon to initialize the flooding sequence, and while Harmon is really upset by this, the plasma cutter at his throat shuts him up, and Altman forces him to swim for it.
Yep.
As they escape through the submarine base again. They surface, and Altman's alive. Harmon appears to be barely alive, but anyways, Altman drags him into the boat, and they try to make a run for it to escape the sucking vortex that you get whenever anything very large sinks. But then Harmon wakes up and cold cocks Altman with an anchor, and he collapses and seems to die. And that is how the book...
That is the end of the actual book.
Yeah, it's the end of the actual book. But that's not actually the end of the book. There's actually like 3 more epilogue chapters.
Yep.
Before we jump into that, how did you like that as the end of the book?
Depressing.
It is depressing.
I was slightly frustrated
Why?
because you didn't know whether or not Altman was dead, and the bigger question is, who is Harmon, and where in God's name is he going to go get, quote, real help?
Well, we know. He's going to our favorite Dredger Corp
Yeah,
compound.
I know that now, but...
He's going to become much less expendable in Markov's Markov book.
He's going to go get
He's
some
going to have to break out that little rubber eraser and like take off a couple tally marks.
He's going to go get some hanky-panky from Markov.
So we do have an epilogue that's very long compared to the very short prologue. Altman comes to, and he finds himself with Krax, Markov, and Stevens, who reveal their plans to re-recover the marker, replicate it, because they had all the camera footage saying that that was what it wanted. Now they understand, and Altman finally gave them what they wanted.
And all the copies from the Hammond.
Yeah, they have all that information. And also to, at the same time, proceed with Guth's research into the synthetic life form, which forms the necromorphs. Then they also condemn him to captivity. Chapter 2, there's some torture. There's some slow psychological erosion. I didn't really write a whole lot about it because it's kind of redundant, but Markov finally reveals after a while that they'll use Altman as a false prophet to kickstart unitology and spread interest in it, in a grand plan, I guess, to indoctrinate the populace to the marker. But before they do that, they're going to martyr him by forcing him to do battle with the cracks.
With a spoon.
With a spoon.
Yep.
He wants to make sure that it's a fair fight. Markov does. So he gives him a spoon. And then in chapter 3 of the epilogue, Altman is summarily dumped into an arena, and that brings us full circle to the prologue, where we find somebody fighting a giant brute, or cracks in this case.
Yes, we find out it is called the Cracks.
Yep, and
And
Altman
it has
is...
Krax's face on his big
Yep.
belly.
And it rips Altman in half.
Pretty much.
Ending the book.
Hooray!
Alright, so did you think Dead Space Martyr was a effective extension of the Dead Space canon?
Absolutely.
I agree. I still kind of wish that I had read the book first, but it is what it is.
In this case, we all read the book second to the game, because I played the game years ago. Hadn't read the
Yes.
book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're all on the same page there, whereas before I had finished a book before I finished a game, and you conversely had finished a game before you finished a book. Okay, I like it a lot. I think there's some weak points. The chapter divisions are a little schizophrenic in the way that they're arranged. Sometimes they go on way too long. Sometimes they don't seem to go on quite long enough. But the overall effect of the slow building tension and horror, and then the breakdown physically and also mentally and structurally works really well.
Yes, I agree.
The fights are really well written. The dialogue is really well written throughout the book. I think it's a very good extension of Dead Space.
Yeah.
A very meaningful extension. Because it gives you a lot about the history of unitology and what the heck is really going on with the necromorphs.
I agree. I fully agree with that.
That, and I will probably at some point pick up the second one and read it.
As will I.
I was thinking I'm going to do that too, yeah. I would be okay with doing another episode on this.
Yeah.
So this is a positive, very long episode.
Anyway, so this has been the Canon Fodder Podcast. Our thanks to our special guest host, Jenn, and her horror expertise.
What are we doing next time?
We are doing Borderlands.
Gunsight.
Gunsight is the book, which follows Brick.
Yeah.
Brick!
Jeez.
So if you're following along with us, the next one is to pick up from your local library if you can, or Amazon or whatever. Borderlands Gunsight by John Shirley. I feel like I just got ripped in half.
The Canon Fodder Podcast is produced and hosted by Travis Knight and Kyle Newcomb. Theme music composed by Lucas Knight. Logo designed by Thomas Rigney. Follow the Canon Fodder Podcast on Twitter at Canon Fodder Pod, or contact us through our website, canonfodderpodcast.com. And that's CANON. If you like the show, leave us a review on your podcast provider of choice. Thanks for listening.